Are Breck and Sherry presiding over tonight's meeting? Okay, so I'll make sure to introduce Breck as the chair. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December 2021 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. We should now be live on channel 10, and we're continuing to stream on the city's streaming channels. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I will be moderating tonight's meeting on the virtual side of things to make sure that things run smoothly. Before I hand things over to Brett Gastinger, our chair, I'm going to go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips just to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly for everybody participating. So first, for anybody who might be watching from home, I will introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have we have Brett Gastinger, the chair of the BAR. We're also joined by Sherry Lewis, the vice chair, as well as members Jody Lehendro, Ron Bailey, James Zemer, Robert Edwards, and Carl Schwartz. We're also joined by Jeff Werner and James Fries, who are both city staff. And throughout the meeting, applicants and other participants will join the meeting as needed. For members of the public who are on the call right now who wish to provide comment, there are several places in the meeting where you can speak. At the beginning of each meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. Then before the BAR deliberates on each individual application, we allow time for public comment as well. In order to provide comment, we ask that you register for the meeting in case you're watching on channel 10. And then you'll become an attendee. And when we get to the comment portion, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. For applicants who are currently online already, for your applicant presentation, I will share my screen through pages of your application that you submitted for the visual aid and assistance for the board. While the BAR deliberates, I'm happy to share my screen again to reference specific pages or drawings. Just please give me a page number so I can navigate to that page in the packet. As we've done in past meetings, we'll have short periodic breaks if needed, and our chair will direct us for when those are necessary. I can go ahead and pass things over to Brett Gastinger, our chair, but please let me know if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks everybody. Welcome to this regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review, the last one of the year, last one for our esteemed chair, Carl Schwartz, and I hope Tim pokes his head in at some point this evening. It's his last
He'll be here in a sec.
As we move forward, staff will introduce each item followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. And I will ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. And after questions are closed, we'll ask for comments from the public. And for each application, members of the public are allowed 3 minutes for both questions and comments. Speakers should please identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is, these things that relate to the exterior aspects of the project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. So thank you, everyone. The first item on the agenda is matters of the public not on the agenda. So if there's anyone who would like to speak to something, please raise your hand or hit *9. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
You'll have up to 3 minutes for any items not on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I see 3 attendees in the queue, and none of them are raising their hands.
Okay. Next, we'll move to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have 2 items. Number 1 is approval of the meeting minutes from May 18th, 2021. And the second is a certificate of appropriateness for 112 West Market Street, the Haven, that has also some additional language that has been suggested by staff. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the consent agenda be approved.
Second.
I will call a vote. Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
I will abstain. I have a relationship to the project on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
and Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. The vote is, well, with one abstaining, unanimous.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to deferred items, and the next item is the certificate of appropriateness for 517 Rugby Road.
Okay, so get going here. This is, you all reviewed this back in April of this year. It come in as a formal application, but it was that's when they had their preliminary discussion. This is 517 Rugby Road. It is within the Rugby Road University Circle Venable Neighborhood ADC District. This house was constructed around 1910, and it is a contributing structure within the district. It's also a contributing structure to the National Register District. One of the things we discussed the last time, there was this request to expand the front porch as well as an addition on the rear of the house and some other exterior alterations. But just to be clear, we had some confusion about whether it had been shingles on the house or been siding. And the understanding is that the wood shingles that were shown in the city survey had actually been installed on top of wood siding in the 1980s. The shingles were removed. Also, the original siding was removed, and the current masonite siding that you see now is what's there. So this is not original siding on the house. And also, just to be clear on the request relative to the porch, there are segments of it which are original, or at least appear to be based on the photographs, but it is not from the entablature up. It's not original. So just to, this is a request for a COA for front porch extension and reconstruction, the addition to and rehabilitation of the existing house, and related site work and landscaping. And it's a rather lengthy list of things here, but I've broken it down into the description of work that's being done to the existing house, involving replacing the siding, some roof repairs, gutters, downspout replacements. Second, is the front porch, the work there. The BAR had approved extension on either side of the front porch. I don't recall when, but so they've got that there. This had come in to you all in April, the idea of reconstructing the front porch as a longer single porch. What's come back is an effort to retain that original section and then construct porch wings on either side, if you will. And then the third piece is the rear addition that will be added to the back of the house. It will look similar to the house, but it will be differentiated with a different exposure on the siding, a different type of trim. The windows will obviously be slightly different. And then with that, there's some landscaping, associated lighting going on with this project. So it was, don't really make a recommendation. I did offer some thoughts in here about the front porch, again, differentiating between the new and the existing, that you all can, there's nothing that speaks against what they're doing, the fact that it's been bastardized somewhat. But in this, again, as staff report, you see that April 2021, where the idea was a continuous new porch, and here next to it, you see that differentiation between the centerpiece and the two wings. I did say in here that if perchance, and I know that Eric can explain better, but they're looking to move forward with construction of this, hopefully at the end of the semester. So if for any reason there's an issue with, the porch, whereas the siding, or I'm sorry, the rear addition may be acceptable, you all could break this up, but not into, you would have to simply approve what you wanted and then omit any elements that were left out. That would have to come back later as a separate request. So it would not be, we're going to approve the addition, but defer the porch. Tonight would be anything that you aren't accepting would be omitted if you were going to approve other pieces. Aside from that, the only two recommendations for any conditions would be our standard regarding lamping for exterior lighting, and that the cementitious siding and trim materials use the smooth side and not the faux grain side. So are there any questions for me? Otherwise, I know Eric's here, ready to, he looks like he's on site, ready to point to things for us. All yours.
Okay, I'm Eric Antman. Ready, Robert?
Yep, I'm good.
Great. I'm Eric Antman from DGP Architects here in Charlottesville, 206 5th Street Northeast. And happy to be here to present on behalf of the Alpha Mu chapter of Delta Sigma Phi fraternity at UVA. And Jeff gave a very good summary. Thank you for that. It touched on the main points of the scope of work. So that was a good introduction. This first slide, I'd like to start with just sort of going through briefly the various periods that we've seen the building in and make a clear distinction so we all have the same understanding of existing historic versus existing non-historic to the period of significance, which we're calling early 20th century, circa 1915, and proposed or new construction. And Jeff touched on that regarding the shingles as being one of those items. So that the top left photo is circa 1915, built roughly 1910. And what we can see there is a slate shingle roof as evidenced by the most likely lead hip caps. And then horizontal siding and corner boards. And if you zoom in, you can see there are 41 rows of siding in this existing historic condition. We can come back to that later on. And then you can see on the south side, which in this photograph is the left, there is an open porch. Again, that original, well, at least within 5 years of being built, original, circa 1915 from 1910. As well as shutters on both the primary east facade, which is the entry facade, and the north facade, again, being on the right. I think I said that correctly earlier. The porch on the left is south. I think I said that. And then you can see a die style center bay entry porch with a low slope, most likely very close to almost flat roof with a balustrade. Probably saturated tar paper up there for the roofing material, possibly flat seam metal. Can't tell from the photograph, but what we can see is that it's very low slope, as well as a railing from the front column connecting to the house. We know it's got vertical pickets. Zooming in, can't really see, distinguish any details. So those are the significant existing historic conditions. Moving to the top right photo, circa 1983, as already explained by Jeff, the corner boards and siding were completely obscured with shingles overlaid. That's what previous reports say. It covered the the previous historic siding material. All I can say for certain is today those shingles are gone and the siding underneath is existing non-historic, being masonite. The corner boards do appear to be historic. If they're repairable, we certainly would like to keep them in their existing position. Then you can see for the center entry porch, retains its die style configuration, appears to have close to the historic entablature from the architrave up through the cornice in place. but the roof has been removed and replaced. You can see the peak of that hip comes up almost to the windowsill. We're obviously in the historic circa 1915 photo. That is not the historic condition. The porch on the south side to the left has been enclosed, and appears that gutters and downspouts are close to their original historic configuration. Moving on to the lower left, sort of looking at some more existing non-historic conditions. We have siding in place, which is non-historic. Shutters remaining on the east elevation, which is the entry elevation. Again, non-historic. It's obvious from their fabrication that they are not pegged stile and rail shutters from early 20th century. They're shop fabricated mid-century, maybe 70s. The windows have also been replaced. So the existing windows, I can't tell you what was there in 1983, but we do know that the double hung 2/2 windows that are there now are not the historic windows. They were also not replaced with sash replacements as proposed in, I believe it was 2014, the last time this project came before the board. Sash replacements with the existing non-historic frames was approved, but that work was not done. So we still have the mid-century windows, and we'll be proposing to repair those in place. There are some details regarding the porch, the entry porch. I have some photographs that are detailed photos that we'll come to later. Suffice it to say that the understructure, meaning the floor and flooring, are existing non-historic, and there are various conditions of historic or not above the bed mold, and we'll see those in the detailed photos. Then in our proposed elevation, and you'll see this in the plan in a minute, it also shows better. We're proposing to retain the historic center bay porch in place and adding wings, and there would be distinguishing details so that we are not copying the historic conditions. And again, there are details for that that we'll look at in a few minutes. So that's sort of the survey of the three conditions of existing historic, existing non-historic, and proposed. We'll sort of come back to all of those as we go. And I don't know if I'm supposed to stop for questions, but maybe I should before I keep rolling. Robert, do we want to see if there's anything about that, or should I just keep presenting?
What do you think, Breck?
I think that's probably sufficient. We'll have a chance
Okay.
for public and
Great.
our questions and further conversation.
Perfect. So next slide, Robert, please. So for context, we're on the southwest corner of University Circle and Rugby Road. It might be helpful to zoom into just the house if you can do that. And the purple to blue areas, perfect, thank you. So in the center, the part of the house that's shown as tan is the existing historic footprint, of course, with the enclosed porch on the south, which again is to the left. Purple areas are areas of proposed new construction of covered parking area and terrace to the west and open uncovered terrace to the south. And then the in that same area, those cross-hatched red areas are selective removals of existing non-historic additions, which are kind of glommed on the back. We'll see photographs of those in a minute. And then the blue areas on the east elevation, there on the entry side. The blue areas would be the proposed porch extensions. And actually, since we're on the plan, could you zoom into that a little tighter, please, Robert? Just the porch area. Thank you. So you can see the die-style round columns and then the half rectangular pilasters, all historic, engaged to the east wall. And then we would be proposing to add half engaged pilasters of different profiles and round columns at the outside corners. And I think that's it for this slide, is just general orientation. Then this slide, I won't read every one of these bubbles to you, but they distinguish all of the specific materials and so forth. Landscaping, we've got city plant list items called out as appropriate. There are some existing steps that lead up to the center entrance, which will be reconstructed with new retaining walls, as well as a second new sidewalk instead of steps slightly to the south. Retaining wall rebuilt between those two stairs because it's basically a field rubble wall that's completely disintegrated. There's an existing tree there, number 3, just to the left of the driveway, the biggest tree in the front yard. It's in good condition. It'll be retained. And the southeast corner of the house, there's a tree noted as new. It's number 14 there. You'll see in the photographs, there is a tree shown there. That tree is no longer there. Met an unfortunate demise about 2 years ago. And I'll just say we'll leave it for questions. If anybody has questions about the details, I think I've covered it pretty well. The only distinction is that on this plan, you see where the 2 red arrows are, it's sort of a split plan. We're showing the first floor, which is 1 story higher to the east on the entry side. And then to the west, it's the lower floor, which is down at that lower level of parking on the west side because the driveway goes down. Can we move on, please, Robert? Existing condition photographs. You can see there's a aggregation, I'll say, of various conditions of that porch. We have treated lumber balustrades and decking and treated lumber floor joists, all in states of dangerous disrepair, certainly non-historic. I'll get back to the porch details because there are better photographs of that. And then in the lower right, that's the existing set of steps and the essentially non-existent retaining wall. Okay, next, please. Top left photograph is the northeast corner, which shows how the driveway goes down towards the west side of the site and the lower level, as well as some views from adjacent properties on the next 3 photographs. The 2 at the bottom, you can see the existing non-historic accretions on the back. And we're certain that these are non-historic because the brick and the mortar is clearly later period than the main house. The intersection of the second floor, it's lower, first, second, and then attic is the third. So on that second floor, the intersection of that little rooflet and the historic cornice would not have been done that way in an historic condition. It's clearly an afterthought of later addition. Then the next slide, I believe, has all of that.
And Eric, I just might say we have had the chance to review these, so I just keep your comments to anything that you felt we needed special attention.
Yep. I think I'll be within 10 minutes. I'm almost done here. So let's go ahead and skip the slide. Then adjacent properties, we don't need to touch on that one. This one shows the areas to be removed. Again, clearly non-historic. Details with elevation tags for all of the proposed materials. I think the main thing to focus on these elevation renderings is the change in details that provide information for the viewer of what is historic and what is non-historic. And so speaking to just the main house first, there is an existing frieze board which shows in the historic photographs. So that's been sort of recreated. It exists in its historic condition along with the corner boards. So we would retain that. And there is no trim board or rim board, skirt board at the bottom. And we have 41 courses. So as you move around to the north elevation, if we could go there, one more. Yeah, so we've you can see the 2 conditions there side by side, existing historic on the left and proposed on the right with changes in the siding spacing, the reveal going from 6 to 7.5 inches, and also changes in the molding profiles and locations. And then if we can scroll back up one, I'd like to hit the porch here. So you can see, if you could zoom in to the red and blue bubbles and notes. So what's in blue, and you'll see this in the photographs, is existing historic columns from the bases up to the capitals, the architrave, the frieze, and the bed mold in some locations. On the south side, the bed mold's been removed and replaced with a piece of crown molding of different profile, which is obviously not a good mitered connection. And then the non-historic roof above, and then the proposed areas flanking left and right. Okay, ready to move on? Nothing different or notable in this elevation. Oh, it's actually one small point. It shows better on the next slide. Please go to 13. So you can see on the left, which is the south, where the 14 is, that's the new dormer on the back with siding parallel to the roof. And then that would have a 3/3 window. And then number 3 dormer on the right, which is the historic condition with its horizontal siding. So again, there are changes in profiles and siding that indicate it's subtle, but it's enough for DHR and Interior Secretary standards for distinction of historic and new or different era. Okay. So photo documentation of existing front porch, existing column base on the left, and then that sort of non-historic replaced above the bed mold condition. That's all new structure and trim above the bed mold, as well as this sort of crown and bed mold miter joint there that shows a non-historic piece. Okay. Same thing for the pilaster attached to the house. You can keep going. And then what the drawing on the left is the sort of field measurements of the existing conditions. And then that would be for the center bay. And then what we're proposing to construct for the left and right flanking bays detailed on the right. So we have the existing is a Roman Doric. It's simplified. The profiles aren't elaborate as much as they would be in a truly classical, but it is Roman Doric, and we're proposing to have the new details more in line with Tuscan order. You can see there's a difference between the attic base on the left and the Taurus base on the right, as well as necking and capital differences, and then changes in the moldings in the architrave and bed mold. There's also a detail for how the section for how we would do the railing. And this is appropriate for a mid-century addition to an early 20th century porch. On the left, that's the wood railing. And then the detail on the right is the metal handrail, which you get around on the southwest side of the terraces. Okay. Lighting cut sheets. The downlight goes over the lower level entrance door. The wall or soffit mounted security lighting is indicated in various locations, all on the rendered elevations. We have those as low as we can get them to minimize light throw onto adjoining properties, but high enough to actually light the area that needs to be lit and out of the reach range of tampering. And then those are the recessed ceiling lights above the parking area and a cut sheet for the Pella Reserve window we're proposing to use. I think that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the public? Please either raise your hand or hit *9 if you're calling in.
I do see a raised hand, Mr. Chair, from Eric Edwardson. Mr. Edwardson, I'm going to ask you to unmute, or I will allow you to talk, and then you'll need to unmute yourself. One sec. Can you try talking? It might.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm here.
great.
Okay. Yeah, not a question. I just wanted to let you all know I'm from the Alumni Corporation Board from the fraternity there, and just want to let you know I was here.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Doesn't look like it. All right, any questions from the board? James?
Yeah, on the, hey Eric, how's it going? On the, I think the first plan that shows the demolition, the one that had the areas in red. Yeah, if you could zoom in, Robert. There's a couple, it looks like windows that are shown here as being removed, but I didn't see those as being removed on the elevations. Just wondering if you could speak to that. Are those going to be removed or what's?
Yeah, they'll be removed and replaced with new units to match the rest of the new units that are going in on the first and second floors and actually up at the attic level. That's all embedded within the new construction. Sorry, except for the porch on the south, that's still exterior. And then down on the lower level, those need to be doors that go out to the that covered terrace area in the center. And then the flanking doors, windows are shown as relocated. That's correct.
And there's one on the north side there at the driveway.
That's at the lower level. I'm honestly not sure why that's shown as removed. Let me look at the elevations. That's a small, like, coal hopper window. I'm honestly not sure why that's being shown as to be removed.
I see it, right.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the diagram says those are all non-historic.
Correct.
And is that just the sash that's non-historic or the opening itself?
In the first and second floors, or the ones that are being removed?
The ones that are being removed.
They are non-historic, the entire window assembly, frames, sashes, leaves, everything. They date to mid-century. That lower level's been reconfigured.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Got a
Carl?
couple questions. Excuse me. On the what sheet is this? Sheet 3. Some of the landscaping reference to some of the landscaping. I can't find item 16, the sweet shrub. Oh wait, never mind. I just did. Sorry, I looked for that for. Okay, that's embarrassing.
Just in front of the porch. Well, they're really, really little on the plan.
And they're awfully tall. Is that intentional to let them get that tall? Or I guess I got the sweet shrub, but it looked like Google told me those would be about 13 feet tall. You have them in front of the front porch, and then the button bush, 6 to 12 feet. You've got along the street. Is the intention to let those get the full height?
No, they need to be maintained down at the street level around 5 feet, maybe 6. And foundation plantings next to the porch, 3 feet.
Okay.
We don't want those up over the floor level, and we've got about 28 inches of vertical there.
Okay.
I don't think sweet shrub will get that tall. 13. It's not getting 13 feet in this.
Okay. How tall is it getting, Breck?
4 feet. 3
Okay. Well, so much for Google. All right. That was, I think I had one. My PDF keeps freezing. Sorry.
If they survive.
Oh, well, sounds like you've got something to say about that. I think that was, yeah, all my questions. I can't find the other ones. I'm sure I'll find them later.
While we're on that plan, could I insert my question? I was curious, Eric, I saw and you referenced the new retaining wall on Rugby, but I didn't see a material or height or what. I don't see much information about that in the documentation.
Yeah, sorry, that was Jeff and I did discuss that via email. I just didn't, I guess, get into what was submitted on record. We'll do either a block or concrete retaining wall with stone facing or just a stone wall. And the intent would be to have it be rounded field stone that looks like it's natural to that area. And the only reason I don't say if it's a reinforced concrete wall or just a stone wall, mass stone wall yet is because I'm not sure how high it is, and we need a structural engineer to detail that. But it's not going to be an engineered self-stacking non-mortared wall from Lowe's. The intent's to have it look like a field stone retaining wall.
And that would be stone cap as well in order to.
Not with a cap like you'd think of as a ledge stone, as just like the rubble wall, up to a mortared top. Exactly.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did find my other question. The front porch roof. You mentioned it when we were looking at the historic photographs that the current roof goes up to just on the underside of the windowsill. Your drawings show it a little bit lower, but then just labels it as a historic roof to be re-roofed. Are you intending to lower the framing down or the slope of the roof? Or are you?
No, we wouldn't be changing the framing unless it needed to be so changed. So, if it's a matter of inches of where that ridge comes in, I'll have to beg off for drawing inaccuracy. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So, but it will be. I guess it'll match what is existing, which is basically just the underside of the windowsill.
Yeah, the existing non-historic roof framing will stay where it is and be repaired in place if necessary.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions from the board? Sherry?
So Eric, you're saying that all the windows on the back of the house, north, I guess, side of the house, are not original?
So none of the windows surrounding the house, to my knowledge, are historic. They've all been replaced roughly mid-century. They have aluminum sash liners, glazing compound conditions that are not historic. It's not glass from 1910. So I can't speak for sure about the frames inside the walls because we haven't taken them apart. Bottom line is we're not changing them except on the east elevation where they become embedded within the new construction addition. So they're being just repaired in place.
But they're going away on the backside because of the addition. So they're
Correct on the
the
west side.
And
That's
what
right.
about but do you think the placement of the windows is original? I'm just curious.
I think they're slightly different sized because we have zoomed in on the siding spacing, and we know where the bottom and the top boards are, and you count off 41 courses in the existing photograph, and then you do the same on the historic photograph, and the windows don't line up. So I think they have moved subtly from the historic condition, but again, not changing them. So.
And what about the door? Is that thought to be original on the back? And is there a transom that's been painted over it, or what is that detail?
On the back being
facing the parking area, I guess facing what? Oh, the directions are unclear, to be honest. I think it's south and west, maybe. On the back, on the side that does not face Rugby Road. How about that?
right. So the
door that's elevated, that is on the second story if you're looking in the back of the structure.
Okay, so the main floor level with with the transom on the porch.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure, since we were planning on that being within the new construction. We haven't surveyed that door closely.
Okay, thank you.
Last chance for questions. Comments from Tim, you're muted. Tim, you're still muted. Still muted. Well, you could put it in the, there you go.
Eric, the security lighting, is that something that's, how do you envision that being used? Is that just for, because there's a security situation, or is that something, those things are gonna be on all the time?
A little bit of both. So if you go to the photograph that shows, I just want to make a distinction between some lighting that's already there and what elevation it's at.
Okay,
So up there above the Delta Sigma Phi letters, if you could zoom in on that top left photo. So there's some security lighting up there by the downspout, and on the other corner, on the left, the southeast corner in the same location. So those are all the way up at roof level, and we'll be keeping those in place, repairing if necessary. Everything else is proposed to be new. So, we have a situation here where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic at night after social events or coming home late from the library. And parts of this building are out of sight, hidden from view of the street, in secluded areas with no sight line. So that's why I'm calling them security lighting. And we could have them motion activated if that's something that the board feels strongly about. There would be periods during a social event, for example, where they'd be turned on and left on for extended periods of time. But again, around the other three sides, we've got them basically at one floor level above wherever the ground level is. So not all the way up at this very high roof level where you'd get a lot of light wash spreading further than it needs to. Tried to keep them down low, so it would be just lighting the walking areas below them.
okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I had one more question. So on the front porch, I think it's slide 16. You were discussing the existing porch is Roman Doric, and then the additions being Tuscan. And I guess I'm just curious, we'll get into comments. I do think you've been successful at trying to retain that center section of the porch and kind of pulling your wings back a little bit.
Correct.
But I think that's nice. I guess I'm worried about where the entablature from the two wings crashes into the original porch. Are those entablatures the exact same, or it looks like the tinea, like the top of the architrave before it
Correct.
goes to the frieze, might be slightly different.
Yes, it's the same. That zinnia there is the same height, so it would intersect well, but not be a molding profile. It's basically a flat distillation of the curved molding.
Okay. So just cope around the curve, I guess.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. But all the other elements line up.
Correct. The bed mold would and the crown mold would.
Okay, great. That's answers my question. Thank you.
Similar effort was taken with where the rail intersection is around the two bases, so that we're trying to get that bottom rail to sort of nest in there with the profile on the attic base of the historic, so it can be sort of coped in without chopping up that base or having an awkward connection.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any further questions? Any comments from the public?
I don't see any raised hands, Mr. Chair.
Okay, comments from the board?
I'll jump in real quick. The spotlights definitely concern me. I mean, at the very minimum, it seems to me they ought to be hooded, because they're just sort of glare bombs, those power lamps, without any kind of shroud on them.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I just think, that's kind of a antiquated lighting system. So I just think doing something to, reduce the amount of light spray and make sure they really are pointing down makes sense. I actually think, generally speaking, they're probably more effective up high, just for the simple reason that you can make them point down, right? So in terms of, because the house is a little bit below the street too, right?
Correct.
So, if you have them on that lower level, well, at least on the front side, which I don't think you do.
Yeah, they're up there. The existing are up high at the roof level
Yeah, so,
on the entry side.
They're not in your face, but I think, I'd rather see a strategy of downlights rather than something that's on the house projecting away from the house, or is something actually lighting from outside toward the house. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it. So that's one item. And then the other thing I just wondered about, what's the pitch on that side, this side? If I'm looking at the front of the house, the shed to the left, what's the pitch on that guy? It's like 2 and 1 or 1.5.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Are we talking about the porch?
Actually, I'm looking at the shed to the left of the porch. If you're looking head on, there's, where the is.
I'm not sure. It's existing, so I haven't measured it. It's shown the way it exists, but I can't tell you exactly the slope.
It looks pretty flat. So I'm just wondering if to make, particularly since you can be up above the house and the photographs you take don't, make it appear like you don't see the roof, but what about putting a flatter pitch on the 2 wings so that you really do get some sense of the prominence of the center section rather than having the same slope?
Yeah, Tim, that's actually a good idea. We'd be amenable to that. And the roofing material can accommodate that as well. We have a 412 slope on there right now. And that painted standing seam metal roof can accommodate down to a 212. So
does it really read more than, it's a, kind of a flat section. And then I think it has a little more identity, and the centrality of the original porch remains.
Yeah, I like that idea, and we can certainly accommodate that. That's a good suggestion.
And that's my 2 cents.
Regarding the security lighting, I'd suggest the board consider making just a note in their approval that sort of final fixture be approved administratively, and we can certainly accommodate that.
It's just with those par lamps, you see the side of the lens, and they're real just.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Can I make a comment? Robert, could you go to page 76 of the packet? So I'm concerned about the 2 different columns, and I'm curious to know what the board members think. I understand the intent to have some subtle differences between the 2, so that you can tell which one, a trained eye can tell which one's original, which one's the later. But I worry that instead of a deliberate decision to make a subtle difference, it's going to look more like a clumsy mistake in trying to match something. I'd prefer even a simple square column for the porch extensions and leaving the Doric original columns for the original porch as a distinction between the what's new and what's historic. But I just throw it out there. This is the one thing that bothers me, that the necking being different. I just think it looks a little clumsy.
Can I respond to that first, Robert? Is that all right? So Jody, I think that's an interesting comment, and we actually looked at a couple different schemes that considered square columns there with simpler profiles to them. And what we thought was that it looked too weak and that there was too much of a distinction between the 2. However, with the change in the roof slope now as also indicating more of a distinction, it's going to have a lighter feel above that entablature. I think that might actually also be a good idea, and more distinction that's clearly differentiated, not as sort of a bad match. So we could do that as well. I think that's a good point.
What other board members think. Am I making something up? Is this a concern of anyone else's?
No, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I could even see if you're, I think you're right about the roof, Eric, but making those two more of an alliance. But I could even see if you were worried about the sense of scale, even, doing a corner condition where you've got three columns or something like that. If you wanted to make it more distinct and make them square, get the scale you're looking for. But just that would create enough of a distinction from how the corner is turned with the old house with the round columns versus, 3 square columns.
Good point.
To that point of paired columns, Tim, we also had where we sketched and looked at where the new cornice or the new entablature is, I'm going to say, hanging on the historic entablature where that T intersection is.
Yeah.
We had another column there. So it looked like a paired column sort of at that center bay. And then it was just becoming like too much. So we took it out. But with more slender members, I think we would revisit putting that column back there as well, which sort of then brackets that both of those side bays instead of just letting it kind of hang off the end.
Yeah, and then I think if you reinforce that corner with a, basically a triple, 2 doubles, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That would really get the distinction between how one turns a corner and how the other one turns a corner.
Yeah, I like all those suggestions.
Yeah.
I still have a concern and really can't support the extension of the porch generally. I don't think our guidelines support it. I think it's, I don't think that's the spirit of the Secretary of Interior standards. In particular, the number 7 of section D, do not remove or radically change entrances and porches important in defining the building's overall historic character. And from the historic photos, this has been, defining from its construction. I don't mind the extension of the paved surfaces that are existing there currently, or remaking those into something that's more safe. But I'd also just note that in prior board review, at least as according to the staff notes, that in 2014, enlargement of the decks that might have been proposed at that time was also deemed not appropriate. So I am supportive of the project. Otherwise, I think the approach in the back makes sense. I don't have really too much concern about that, but I do feel this is quite a big change to this historic structure.
Not that, I guess since I'm going to be gone soon, it isn't going to matter so much, but I do feel like there's enough questions about this porch that we need to separate the COA between the big addition and the porch, so that you get a chance to look at the columns, look at the roof slope, and then bring it back to the board. But it might be important to see, before you do that, how many people on the board would be supportive of that porch, and noting that Tim and I are both going to be gone.
Other comments from the board?
I mean, I was going to say that it sounds like with the changes that we were talking about, we might need to see the revision to the porch regardless. So it may be where we could approve the rear addition and let them keep moving ahead, because obviously there's a lot of design work there. But then if we're sorry, my daughter's here. If we're going to revise the porch dramatically, I think we'd probably want to see it again.
Hey, James,
Whether it's
can you
roofs
repeat that?
Yeah, sorry.
She was louder than you were.
Yeah, sorry.
So cute.
She didn't like the porch. She was crying. No. Basically, if we go down the road of thinking about adding roofs to the side porches, and that's something we want to accept, but there's going to be changes in slope and changes to the columns, I think we'd like to see it again, come to the BAR again. But I would support possibly approving the rear addition and then asking them to bring the porch back. That sets aside Breck's point of whether it's acceptable to the Secretary of Interior standards. Does that answer your question, Carl? And Sherry?
Well, Breck,
Or
are you
maybe
happy
that
with that? That's more your decision.
Yes, no, well, no, it's our decision. I guess that maybe, is there anyone who's ready to approve the porch as documented tonight?
No.
I don't think we'll be there. Are there any, so let's set that aside and see if there's any other questions related to the rear addition or any other comments related to the rear addition or the site plan.
I had a comment on the site plan. The plantings along the street, this could just be me, but it's, when you put up, I always, if it's a solid line of hedges, I treat it like a wall or a fence, and 5 or 6 feet is too tall to me. So if it could be a species that could be lower, I find it problematic to just say that it'll be cut lower because it never happens. And then we end up with, once it's up tall, it's forever that way. But that, I don't know if that's something that we can request on this or not. Or is it just me?
Yeah, thoughts. Well, I mean, button bush is a little bit tricky. It's not a particularly robust shrub necessarily.
I did have one thing I just wanted to say relative to Breck's comment is I find the decks going off more incompatible with the house than the porch wings. They seem like real anomalies to me. So that I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, I think, it does make sense that the buildings continue to evolve to some degree. So I'm not, I mean, I understand Breck's point, but I think the porch can be done in such a way that I don't feel like it'd be one thing if this was an absolute architectural gem, but I mean, it's a nice house and all that, but I mean, it's not I think you can take some modification over time without compromising its character, but the low decks just don't do it for me ever.
Any other comments on the rear portion or the site plan? Or we ready to make a motion on those elements?
Breck, I was looking this up. Last time you guys looked at a hedge, there was a 128 Madison Lane. There was a fraternity house, and they were adding just continuing a hedge around it. And you all had made the recommendation that the front hedge be maintained at 4 feet or lower, that any side hedge on the property be maintained at 5 feet or lower. So it was a recommendation. And if I recall, the conversation was one of sort of the enforcement. But, I do believe that if you establish a height as a condition of approval, then that allows us to, we're not out policing it, but if there is ever an issue with it, then we have something to fall back on. So I don't think it's outside of the possibilities of what you all can establish as a condition, but certainly you in the past have added it as a recommendation. So,
Breck, you're our landscape architect. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what a button bush is.
Button bush is a native shrub. It is a good species, but it's found in the woods in kind of damp areas. It's not necessarily, doesn't have a huge track record as a particularly robust hedge in our city. So I would recommend strongly to the group that they consider something off the city. Does the city have hedge species? I don't even know, but something more that is going to be a little bit more robust and deal with the foot traffic and the conditions right there on that busy corner. I do like the recommendation of keeping it maintained at 4 feet or lower, or, that seems to make sense.
And just for precedent, it's been a long time, but when Chris Long was doing his house on Park Street, I know we held him up for at least 3 meetings because of a hedge that he wanted in the front. And finally got him down to a boxwood that was short, which he then proceeded to plant something behind it that was about 10 feet tall, and is still there. So,
The
Makes me
butt
think of a
bushes
parking
on,
space, it'll never get used, sorry.
yeah,
We're
see
not interested in trying to circumvent board requirements or desires on this. We're trying to add landscaping that's an improvement to the neighborhood, and we're open to all kinds of suggestions. 3 feet, 2 feet, it's fine. Different species is fine. It's all good.
butt bushes on the list. And in fact, when I talked to Eric a couple of weeks ago, we just said, stick with the trees and shrub list. So yes, we do have a shrub list, but we don't call them shrubberies because we know Breck doesn't like that word.
Excellent. Well, I think sounds like there's general support. I haven't heard any strong concerns about the rear addition. If the kinds of conditions that I have heard relate to the ones that the staff have already recommended: shrouds on security lighting, the retaining wall at Rugby to be fieldstone or fieldstone clad wall, and the recommendation of the site of the hedge at the street to be maintained at 4 feet or lower.
And do we want motion detectors on security lighting so it's not on all night long? That sort of goes back to the city having a lighting ordinance, but I just think light pollution is an issue. Just a thought.
I will say that retaining wall at the front, I did include this from Eric and I talking on the 3rd page of the staff report. Retaining wall with steps in front yard, 20 to 30 inch plus or minus height, fieldstone wall similar to existing, alternative the concrete or CMU concrete wall with stone facing, pending final wall height. So it's in the staff report as an option. It's there. So any reference to as presented in a motion would kind of cover that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready with the motion, and I'm happy to accept any friendly amendments on some of these conditions.
Please, thank you.
May I ask a question, just please, before you do that? Would it be better for the applicant to remove consideration of the porch from this application to be presented in a new application at a later date, so it doesn't have to be declined in this motion?
You could do it either way. You could omit it from the motion, admit it from the consideration for approval. It's not a denial.
Okay, so whatever's the easiest way to do that, we'd like to do that to pull the porch superstructure off this application, however you want to handle it. Sorry for interrupting. Thank you.
No, my motion wasn't going to have any kind of denial in it. It was just going to be straight up approval of the back addition and the demo and everything. So let me find this again. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the demolition and addition to and rehabilitation of the existing house, specifically the rear addition and related site work and landscaping at 517 Rugby Road, satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the Rugby Road, University Circle, Venable Neighborhood ADC, and that the BAR approves the application with the following conditions or modifications. Anybody want to join in?
That the applicant will submit a substitute fixture for the yard security lights.
I'll accept that.
That will include shrouds and motion detectors.
Shrouds and motion detectors. And I might, and also keying to Eric, this may be blindingly obvious, but 3000 Kelvin and, a better CRI. We're trying to be consistent about that.
Those are in the guideline requirements already. Yeah.
So, and Jeff put those as suggested amendments to the motion. So all lamping for exterior lights will be dimmable, have a color temperature not exceeding 3000 K, and a CRI of not less than 80, preferably not less than 90. Jeff has also recommended that we say that the cementitious siding, trim, and materials will be smooth with no faux wood grain.
And that the porch work is omitted, correct?
And I'll say that within this motion and that this does not address any approval of the porch. How about the front shrubs? Does somebody want to address just however that was going to be worded?
That we recommend seeking a smaller species that is more suitable for a sidewalk adjacent shrub, and that they be maintained, that they're required to be maintained at a height of 4 feet or less.
Okay,
Not to
that's my
exceed.
motion.
Not to exceed a height of.
Not to exceed a height of 4 feet.
And I'd like to say, even though it's in the staff piece, because it wasn't in the submitted materials, that the retaining wall I wrote to be fieldstone or a fieldstone clad wall.
Okay, I'm done with my motion. Yeah.
Wait. Sorry, I'm gonna
add something else.
screw things up a little bit because we had that shutter discussion, and I just want to make sure we're okay. They're putting the old shutters back on. Okay, just making sure.
That's what's there.
Second,
Okay.
Second.
You all call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro,
aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
and Mr. Zemer.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, Eric, you're set. We'll catch up on the porch, and I thank all of you for a collectively written motion. Actually went very well, even miles apart from one another. So
Yeah, and thank you all for the constructive comments. They're very well received and appreciate the feedback. Thank you. Have a good evening, all.
Can I
Thank you,
toss
Eric.
one idea,
Thank you, Eric.
Eric? As you're designing the porch, you might consider replicating the original balustrade on the center section. That might help set it apart from the wings, just as you're hashing things out.
Good point. Thanks, James.
All right, everyone. It's we're about an hour in. Do you want to? Are everybody good to keep going to 612 West Main? All right.
main event. All right, while Robert's queuing us up there, again, thank you all on that prior one that well said on the motion. This is a COA request for the formal address is 602 616 West Main, and we refer to it as 612 West Main. This is a property within the West Main Street ADC district. There is an existing 1950s automotive service building there, which is non-contributing. And as I've mentioned in previous discussions, the structure is non-contributing. It will be raised, and that does not require BAR review. So that's not part of this discussion. Just quickly go back through, back in 2019, the BAR made a recommendation on a special use permit request. And for this project, those were incorporated into the approved special use permit, specifically addressing the massing scale of the building and protective measures related to the Rufus Holsinger building, which is located to the west of this. And third, addressing pedestrian engagement and permeable facade at the street level. The request is for a new 4-story mixed-use building. It will be access for the parking will be via the project immediately to the east of it. So there will not be a new entrance to parking. We'll go into the one driveway and continue underneath this new building. There's, you all have had a series of discussions about this, most recently in last month. The applicant provided an update on where they are on things. No action's been taken. It's been deferred. However, this is we're at the point where the BAR would have to take action on this. The applicant can request deferral, but the BAR is in a position of vote up or down on this project. There's a lot going on with the drawings, and I got those out to you yesterday. So just also want to make clear that in the staff report referring to a set of drawings dated November 30th, the drawings that we'll be referring to tonight and using for the evaluation, it's I believe it's 62-page set, and they are dated December 17th, 2021. So those are the drawings of record for when you're making a reference to what has been submitted. I circulated to Ms. Lewis and Mr. Gastinger just an amended motion that at least memorializes the correct set of drawings that you all are referring to. I know there have been a lot of questions about this, and there's I expect a lively discussion tonight, so I don't want to belabor it. I don't know, is Whitney, or I don't think Jeff's in town, so Whitney may have it, but I'll hand it off to you, Mr. Gastinger.
And Breck, can I start with a statement?
Sure. Please do.
So in the interest of full disclosure, I have my office now in the Holsinger building next door, First Baptist Church's building. And while I have a wonderful view of the construction that's going to start to happen next door, I have no financial interest or connection at all to the project at 612 West Main Street, and feel like that I can participate in this discussion without any partiality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting that out there. And so, yes, we'll hand it over to Jeff or Whitney to make their presentation.
You're muted, Jeff.
Oh, there's Jeff. There he is. All right.
Good evening, everybody. I was muting myself out of caution for everything else. So thanks for meeting with us yet again. As Jeff said, we are looking for approval, design approval of the project tonight. We hope to begin construction in April of 2022. I think we also have Ann Prey, our landscape architect, joining us. Whitney is here, Whitney Hudson, who is the project architect, in case we have some technical questions as we get further into it. And I believe Kirk Webb, also from our office, is with us. They know much more of the details, but I'll try to give the overview. But I will also respect the fact that you all have seen many of these slides previously. We don't need to delve into them. And what I will try to focus on this evening, though I'm open to anything and everything anyone else may wish to make sure we highlight, landscape and hardscape, that has evolved a little bit since last meeting. We have a lighting concept that we would like to review with you all, exterior lighting that is. I'd like to touch upon the brick for the exterior. And at the last meeting, there was a request for a number of technical details, which are now in the package that you all have, specifically relating to thin brick and how it will be attached to the building, and also detailed questions such as railings, which are now also in the packet that you all have. But we can touch upon those. I don't think we need to review these historic map overlay precedent issues, as we've talked them through before, in the massing and scale of the building. What you see here is a plan of the ground floor of both 600 West Main Street and 612 West Main, the new project. This is here in the event that we start talking a bit about the facade on the east side of the building. It will be exposed in the courtyard of 600 West Main, but it also gives you an idea that the two buildings will be connected via that existing courtyard. We have yet to work out the details of how the paving might change within the courtyard, but that will happen so that we have access into the new building. If we move along, you start to see some of the exterior details. We do have to close the space. You can see here on the far left, the new building, and then on the right side of that 600 West Main Street in the light gray, there are some mechanical units actually right there, but that will remain between the two buildings. And so there will be a small fence that will hide those from view from both sides. One of the things I'll point out here is that you'll see that the window surrounds, the windows, railings, and this fence, for instance, all shown as being a light bronze. Now, unfortunately, this is coming across as way too gold throughout the presentation. So try to imagine it more as a bronze, more brown than yellow. And we're happy to come back with physical samples of all of those items for a final review. But for representation purposes, this is how it's showing right now. So if we keep going, building elevations, I don't believe there's anything new in general. We still have the majority of the facade that comes toward West Main Street broken into the two masses that come forward with what we call hyphens between them in the middle and to the right. And then stepping back further, the fourth floor, and even further than that, the entrance to the residential component of the project. As we get further into the details, I can talk now a little bit about the brick. At the last BAR meeting, we had some images of our first pass at the brick, and concern was expressed that what we were showing was too institutional, a little bit too much like school, cafeteria, almost a glazed brick. A ground face brick is really what it appeared as. And also the color was a bit more like concrete. So since that time, we've identified another brick that we like very much. It's a much cleaner brick. There are some images, we'll get further back into that. Unfortunately, because of the supply chain, we are probably 3 weeks out yet, 3 to 4 weeks out before we'll have a sample panel done for final review and approval. We are working as hard as we can to get that completed, and that sample panel will have a number of conditions in them representing what we're talking about tonight. We will be showing, well, let me back up a bit. On these drawings, you'll see that we identify 5 different types of brick. One is, brick number 1 is called monarch brick. It's actually twice the length of a standard brick. It's as thin as a standard brick, it's just twice as long. And for our purposes, let me see if I can, I'm not sure that I can annotate on these drawings. Don't know if that's an opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, do you need me to zoom in somewhere, Jeff?
Yeah, well, I guess, Robert, the two elements that come forward, those two will be what is called the monarch brick. Very long, very thin. The joints will be standard concave joints. What we're looking to do here, very quiet, relatively smooth surface. Another one of those bricks is a thin version of the monarch brick. That's actually brick number 5. So it's just the same brick visually. Technically, it's a different thickness. That brick number 5, the thin monarch brick, will be used above and around the windows in that portion of the building's the building that comes forward, those two portions. The hyphens will be a standard modular brick, same size as we all know brick to be, but it will have a raked joint. So we're looking to emphasize the horizontals. We'll also have angled bricks within that. And that you'll be able to see when we get further into the presentation, the pattern that we're anticipating. And that is so that those panels recede. It'll also be used on the residential entry as you look further back. The other thing I'll state that there at the residential entry is going to be a plaster wall. So it will be the one material that's smoother than anything else on the facade leading you in. The textured brick, I'll call it, will be used on the hyphens, and the residential component in the back, and also on the left-hand side, the east elevation of that residential block as it faces 600 West Main's courtyard. The rest of the building will be standard modular brick with concave joints, whether thin or thick. Those are the various brick types. I think the elevations, or I'm sorry, the 3D representations may be the easier place to look at all of that when we get further into them. But knowing that brick is such a crucial component of this, the samples, the mock-ups that we're having made will be done to represent all of the various conditions, including the surrounds, the brick surrounds that we're showing around each of the windows, so that we'll understand it in its entirety. Again, I apologize that we don't have them, but the turnaround time for getting brick these days, getting mock-ups, it's going to be tight prior to the next meeting. Not sure we'll even have it for that. If we'll keep going, this is the elevation facing the courtyard of 600, all textured brick, modular brick for this facade. We can keep going. The other thing I will say, while I'm thinking about it, is for glass, we are specifying that the glass on the entire north facade will be 70% VLT per the guidelines. And that'll be both in the retail and in the residential components. All of their facades are going to be lesser for energy efficiency. This is what we did at 600 West Main Street. Since the elevations are never seen side by side, nobody's ever noticed a difference. This is the south facade facing the railroad tracks that you can see. As we've discussed before, brick wraps the ends, a type of bookends, and then we have IFAS, exterior insulation and finish system, essentially looks like stucco on the rear facade. It will be a color that will come close to matching the brick. We're not looking for contrast here. Again, the railings will be the light bronze. This is the elevation that Jody might be looking at from his new offices, facing the alley between us and the Holtzinger building to the east, the west. Sorry. You can see, if for just a moment, you can see how the hyphen on the far left, the textured brick on that will die into the standard modular brick for the remainder of the building. There is a setback between those two elevations, so it's not as though we're just changing the surface texture right there. Thanks, Robert. If we keep going. Close-up of, on the far right, the retail lower level and the upper level of the residential. These are the first 3 floors. And you can see here the Monarch, let's see, I just want to make sure I'm speaking correctly. Yes. Monarch brick, the surround on the retail on the inset will be metal. Again, the same light bronze, and you'll see that more in the 3-dimensional representations. The railings, it was a question that was raised. The railings will be a horizontal bar on top. We're not going to be seeing attachments on the sides. It'll be very simple. The railings themselves are 1/2 inch round rods, and they will be irregularly spaced for a little bit of variety here. The elevation is so highly regulated. This was an opportunity, we thought, for just a little bit of playfulness. If we keep going, I'm happy to have one of our teams speak to the technical details here, but I did mean what we wanted to show here, and there are a number of details in here about how the thin brick will be attached to the building as much as the standard brick. The brick that we will be proposing comes with corner sections so that when thin brick turns the corner, there are sections that are fabricated so that the brick looks like a standard brick thickness from the side. It won't appear to be wallpaper. This is simply a section through the north facade showing retail, residential, and then the step back for the upper terrace on the 4th floor. This is a detail through the residential entrance with a sloped ceiling, with thin brick on the ceiling of that, sloping down to the glass entry of the residential lobby. Happy to talk through details here. One thing that has changed, I will say this, from this section, even since we submitted this, we just learned that we need to we will have a green roof on a portion of this building. And we were anticipating that it was on the south elevation, as you can see there on the far right. The terrace is just above the ground floor level, would have a green roof off of the terrace themselves. Unfortunately, we were just informed that we need to move it to the rooftop, the rooftop, for purposes that are more technical than even I can get into. So there will still be a green roof here. We hope in the future to have a rooftop terrace. There is not a plan at the moment to provide access to the public, but the green roof will be up there and is being planned so that we don't preclude rooftop terrace in the future. Some of the details, probably more than anything else, showing thin brick where we intend to use it, and also calling out some of the details of the brick surrounds, the protrusions around some of the windows.
Jeff, I'll keep scrolling through the details.
Yep.
Unless you want me to stop on anything.
No, that's fine. This is probably a good one right here. Thanks, Robert. So, list of details, don't need to bore you with the left, but on this page, you do start to see what we are proposing. This is a photograph of the brick that we are anticipating using. And you can see on the second image from below, that is the pattern that we're going to be proposing for the hyphens and for the residential block that sits back from the street. The one good point of reference for the brick that we are talking about is that it is not as light as the brick that was used on the cork. So this is a little bit darker, and we'd have a sample of that, and we can show that to you all once the samples are up, and you can look at that for comparison. But we're not looking to go as white. We're looking for more of a cream, a cream color that has a bit of gray in it. And then, as you can see down below, the plaster for the wall to the residential entry, and then a not so great photograph of a light bronze. Glass information, we've already touched upon this, performance data. Then as we get further into the package, where this is talking about signage for both the residential component, but also the retail components. And our proposal is that for the residential, the signage would be slightly offset of the wall, 612, very simple, very clean. And then above the 5 Retail entries would be the signage for the individual retailers themselves. We'll talk about lighting that signage. That would be someone's own logo, and it would be applied to the metal panels. They will not be backlit. We, in the lighting concept, will talk about how the signage for the retail would be lit. And we are well under the city's maximum required, maximum allowed signage. Mechanical units, a plan of the mechanical units will not be seen from the street from any angle. They're set well into the middle of the building. You can see here where the rooftop terrace may be going in the future. But at this point, there does not appear to be any need for screening of these units. They're very low and won't be seen from anywhere along the street. Again, these are more about mechanical units. We're highlighting those in orange and red so they can be seen, and you can see from all the various vantage points not visible. And if Anne Prey, are you on the line?
I do see Anne. Anne, I'm going to allow you to talk, and you should unmute yourself.
Yeah, let Anne give an overview of the landscape hardscape plan.
Hi guys, thanks Jeff. So yeah, I just want to run through a few of the changes we've made here in plan that are just kind of some subtle shifts. I think the plan for the most part should look pretty familiar to everyone at this point. We have gone ahead though in the residential entry area and really kind of straightened out the garden plan there to allow for the curve of the residential entry to really read as something more special and unique to the whole surrounding. And so that garden plan kind of has gone from those more sort of sinuous forms to the more straight lines coming into the building. I think you'll also see here on the plan that we are now calling out the street trees specifically. I think there were some questions about that last time. And so you can see that we are calling out those trees. We also have gone ahead and added in 2 handrails at the end of the plan. To the far left, you can see those. And in general, I think, actually in general, we have more specific call outs for materials here, where you can see we are calling out the plain gray concrete surface along the front of the building and the concrete pavers in the residential entry area. Some of this I can get a little bit more into when we look at the precedent page at the end, which starts to show some of those material samples. But just knowing we have a lot to go through tonight, I think for the most part, the plan should read as pretty familiar. And so I just kind of thought we could, go through it that way. Yeah. So in our last discussion last month, there were some questions just about the existing conditions. One question was about, what type of trees are there now, and the trees there that they are Zelkovas. You can see in the plan, the one with the green center is going to stay, and that is just beyond our property boundary there and closer to the retail store. And then we have essentially these 5 Zelkovas along the frontage that will all go. If you want to go to the next slide. Yep. And so here you can see in the elevation, just a couple of the changes. I think, it's again, sort of subtle in the elevation, but obviously the 4 trees as required, the shifts in the garden plan at the front, allowing for the curve to read a little bit more clearly at the residential entry, the handrails at the end. I would say the metal planter on the far right did grow slightly. So we have a little bit more planting area in that planter. And then, obviously just starting to get a little bit more at some call outs for the materials. Yep. And so here, really just, again, trying to identify and get more clear about the intent with all of the subtle elements that are making up this landscape, the bike rack, the handrail. Obviously, one of our planters has a bench on it. And so obviously we're looking at a wood product to use for that. Concrete pavers here. we are going with a pressed natural in a Tudor finish, which actually reads really nicely with the brick. My dogs really like it too. The planter color will match the windows and the rails. And then just a little bit more specifically about the street canopy tree being the elm, and then a little bit about the planting in the courtyard, which we are really looking to make that planting just be very much about greens and textures and not a lot of, color there. We're really looking to use the planters to get a little bit more vibrant color kind of going along the street itself, but trying to, at the residential entry, really, just project that kind of calm presence with the plantings. And again, just playing off the greens and the textures there.
I'll jump in on lighting. So there are probably far too many slides here because we've tried to break it down just in case we needed to discuss any one particular element. But the lighting concept here is to allow those two elements, the two blocks closest to West Main Street, to move forward by the not emphasizing them, allowing their lighting, the interior lighting of those blocks, to move closer to the street. They'll be lit. Part of the BAR's guidelines are to bring as much life as we can to the street, and our concern about heavily lighting those two blocks that move forward would be we might be obliterating the actual activity and lighting coming from the residential units. So you'll see that we have a multi-layered lighting scheme to try to allow the vitality activity of what's going on within to actually liven up that part that's closest to West Main Street. So we can get into probably this first slide is the best. It is the overview. The following slides you'll see really just sort of address each of the individual components. Now, I need to say that we are not in any way suggesting that this light will be yellow. These were just part of the lighting concept presentation to us about how and where we would be putting light. So we've got further in the package, I believe we've got 3000 K as the light sources. And this is just to represent where it will be. I'll also say that each of these individual components will be able to be individually dimmed, so that while right now I would suggest that those two columns far right on the hyphen and even there beside the residential entry to me are even reading a little too hot, we will be able to dim those down individually. But the overall scheme here is to light the residential entry, the sign for the residential entry back from the street. You can see a sort of lozenge shaped piece of bit of light there on the address 612. Other than that, there will be a little bit of downlight in that vestibule, but the rest of the light will be coming from within the building at that location. You then see that the hyphens and the residential entry block itself would have light coming from the ground. Part of the reason for that too is to graze the textured, all three of those two hyphens and the residential component are going to have the textured brick, the heavily textured brick. So the point there is to really emphasize that as we graze it with light from below. The fourth floor terraces will not have lights on the building. You can see a little bit of glow up on the fourth floor. That's actually going to be light reflected off of the paving on those terraces. There will be some lighting in the railing, the cornice, that solid cornice that we see on the back side of it. Will be putting a little bit of light on the ground surface. So what you're actually seeing is reflected light from the ground surface. There won't be any lights on the building itself there. And then finally, the lighting that you see, well, two more bits of light, sorry, not finally, but on the building, the remaining element would be lighting of the retail signs in each of the bays, so that's the only light within those, the larger elements that come forward, so that we're really highlighting retailers signage at night as it's seen from West Main Street, no competition with lighting there. And then the final element is there will be some lighting in the sides and within the planters themselves to throw just a little bit of ambient lighting on the sidewalk. So I think we can probably go through a number of these, and when we get to some of the details, then here we go. So some of the types of lights that we're looking at, the linear light, you can see the red dashed, purple dashed line up at the cornice. That is on the residence side of the cornice, lighting down so that it's throwing light on the walking surface. That's that linear light on the top right. The next light is the light that we would be using for the see here, we've got that round adjustable light would be within, in fact, the retail headers. So lighting the signage, and also over at the residential component, throwing light down on the walking surface. They're tiny, they're very small. Then the sides you see there would be within the that fixture to the right or facing right would be in the sides of the planters. And then the light you see there at the bottom would be in ground, throwing light up onto the hyphen, in this instance, the two hyphens, and over at the residential component. Just examples of the light patterning, probably on the top right would be for the retailers, how the light would be seen on the retail facades. And then bottom right, way too bright, way too light, but how we would be grazing, an example of how we would be grazing the textured brick in the hyphens. We have here a little bit more lighting. Again, you can see in the residential component, those down lights we'd be using. The light for the 612 sign itself would be probably a ground mounted light nearby, just putting light right on that part of the wall. That's a lozenge shaped light, so it's not splayed everywhere. And then you can see some ground lights putting a little bit of light. I believe those are in the edge of the planting bed, throwing a little bit of light on the path toward the residential entry. And then again, you see the light there, lighting the textured wall from below. More examples of that.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Jeff.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We can keep going. The other thing we wanted to note here was that part of the reason that we've designed the building the way we have is to not cover up the mural that's on the side of 600 West Main. It was done by, I don't know if all of the members of the BAR were present. I don't think, actually, when this was approved, done by a world-known muralist. And so we want to keep that. We also want it to be an element of experience walking down West Main Street, not just for the residents here. And so the lighting of that will be very soft and intended to give it a glow so that it does have a presence at night, but not overpowering. I think that probably the views speak well for themselves. We tried very hard to model textured brick in the locations that it will be. It's hard for that to come across in some of these renderings, but I believe that the massing of the building reads clearly what our intentions are in terms of where we will have color, how we'll have color, and overall massing and street presence. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions or anything that we can. I guess what I would like to say, however, before turning it over is it's been a long road for all of us. And while we do not have a final brick selection, and probably more than anything else this evening, you saw the first presentation of a lighting concept. We would like to ask for approval conditioned on final approval of brick color and pattern. And if there are issues or concerns we need to come back with regarding lighting, we're happy to do that. But with 2 members of the BAR going off after this meeting, we feel that the continuity would be, we'd hate to lose the continuity. And with an attempt to get under construction in early spring, we really don't have time to lose. So that's the point of our request for approval this evening. So thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thanks to the whole team. Do we have any questions from the public?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the list and I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I have one. Oh, go ahead, Sherry, go.
I think mine's pretty easy. Just a question for Jeff and maybe Robert. Is there some way, Jeff, you could share your screen to show us a sample of the bronze color that you have? Do you have sort of an electronic version of that? I mean, I see.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yep.
Jeff, if you'd like, you can attempt to share your screen.
Well, I'm not sure that I have the best example of that. Whitney Hudson is with us. I don't know if Whitney can pull something up, or I do believe that the sheet that Anne Prey's materials were on, probably the best example as we were looking at it. And Whitney's saying she doesn't have a good photograph to share. But I think Anne's, there was let's see, something's taking a few minutes.
Yeah, I saw that. And I saw.
Yeah, actually, I got that picture from Whitney too. So it's directly from the architects. I just might be reading better on my packet,
Yeah.
But just so you know, it is actually the sample they gave me, the picture they gave me to use. So it is.
And Whitney says that is the best example we have. Let me see, Robert, I can give you the page number. Give me just a second.
Thanks.
And it is an interesting question I'd like to ask. How does the BAR deal with color and sample approvals these days when being present? Here we go, Robert, on page 33. There we go. That's probably the best example we have, Sherry.
Yeah, I saw that.
And we can,
there's a variation, and
Yeah.
with you have one on page 22 also of your.
yeah, that's probably no better.
But there, it shows this gradation, and
Yeah.
I just am wondering where along that spectrum. I mean, I understand that bronze is a organic material that changes.
Yeah, but I guess the question is where on that spectrum from lighter to darker might it be? And I'm going to, let's see, Whitney is saying it's on the lighter side of it, not the darker. So as we look at that.
So it would be
and we
more of a
can-
golden.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I mean, is there like a website, like for instance, I just pulled up a Lucabon light bronze anodized, which is kind of a, for instance, is there a website image that you could tell us all to point to and just look on our own screens that way?
Yeah, give us a sec. And I think Whitney's probably checking that out right now and
Okay.
will send us.
You could send it to
Conyer,
Robert, maybe.
This does lead to my question for you, Jeff. Color. You mentioned color. I'm not seeing a lot of color. I mean, I'm seeing, it's a lighter tones than the building next door. But, right now, the only color relief I'm seeing right now truly is the bronze, whatever color that is in the planting. Am I correct about that?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And we have had this discussion. We've all had this discussion before. And our hope is that we will also get it with planter boxes on the railings. But as I've said, that is not entirely within the owner's control because of maintenance issues.
Right. That's a comment section. So, okay. I mean, I won't get into comments. I'm getting disciplined in my old age.
I've got another material question while we're speaking about that. I know, Jeff, you said that the brick panels will become forthcoming. Is the in the meantime, though, is the strategy with the way the textured pattern is to be created with one edge of the brick tilting out? Is that still operative?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is still the plan.
And do you know how? I'm just curious how much relief you're thinking about getting or hoping to get with that, and how is that tree? Is that being then filled with mortar on the backside?
Yes, I mean, in terms of when it's laid, it'll be filled with mortar in the back so that the rear of the backside of the wall is a continuous surface. We don't want water sitting back there. In terms of the depth of, call it the furthest brick or the furthest out corner of the brick, Whitney, my recollection, well, in the sample panel was, I'm going to say it's 1.5 inches to, I don't know the 2 inches. I'm not sure if we can, again, it'll be represented on the panels. We've done some panels, Breck, but, and they're sitting at Allied, but until we get the right brick, we really did not want to send anybody there because it would be a bit of a futile effort. So it'll be represented in those. I suspect it's going to be about 1.5 inches. 2 inches might be a little bit of a stretch. I'm not quite certain about that.
Okay.
So can I follow up? Does that mean then the head joint's going to be wider there, or is the brick going to be cut so that the head joint is consistently the same width?
The head joint will be consistently the same width, Jody.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Forgive me if this has come up before and my old memory is not helping me. The number of street trees, how were 4 decided upon?
Anne, I'll let you.
4 is based on the city requirement for canopy coverage and street frontage. I believe there were more trees there now because they were fronting a parking lot. If that's, I don't know if that's what you're thinking about.
But could, I mean, is that the minimum? Could more be added?
So we meet the requirement for the number of trees and we exceed the canopy coverage by almost 4 times the amount, or a little over 3 times the amount, based on just that site plan calculation. I believe if we were to look at adding another tree, it would likely happen on the far right-hand side of the building as we look at that elevation that I've included in the packet. The team has always talked about, the trees as far as also looking forward to the West Main Street project, and they show 4 trees in that area. So we also kind of worked back and forth with that number as well.
Well, it looked to me like they were paired, that there was a large gap between the pairs on both sides. I thought maybe that had something to do with the architecture of the 2 prominent bays. Is that not the case?
The layout is in part, to work with the architecture for sure.
So a tree could not be added in that gap between the 2 pairs?
I do not believe so. I think if there was really a discussion to be had there, you could discuss shifting that second group of trees on the right-hand side, one bay over and adding a third maybe to the right. But I think we're trying to kind of just create the continuity down and really address obviously that space in the middle and leave it open as really a nice sort of gap between the two buildings, or between the building with the two pieces.
That would be
Okay.
page 30 of the presentation.
It's definitely easier to look at the visual. So if you, in looking at the right-hand side here, if those two trees were to shift one section over, you could potentially get a third tree in on that right-hand end. The issue becomes, of course, as well, that door on the end is an egress door. And I think we're really looking to make sure that stays pretty clear. I mean, obviously we realize the trees are outboard of that, but just the idea that it's really not going to be, broken up by anything. And so, yeah, this layout worked well with the building, and met all the requirements.
I was just imagining 5 trees evenly spaced along that those 2 prominent sections, just evenly spaced there. And thinking about the pedestrian experience of going down the street and having continuous canopy coverage.
Right.
So,
and I think, to your point, especially as a discussion, how the trees relate to the building, the spacing on them does allow for really a tree to almost go right in the middle there and create that equal spacing that you're talking about.
correct.
In that sort of, gap tooth space there. So I do think it could, create another level of experience for the pedestrian. And I think we would be open to discussing that if that's something that people are thinking about more now too, as we look at the whole evolution of the building.
I appreciate the architectural connection. I just think that it probably would not be picked up by the average pedestrian, and they'd be more appreciative of having the continuous canopy coverage. Just an opinion, just my opinion though.
Related to that, can I ask?
Actually, that does bring, I do have a quick question that sort of made me think of also talking about pedestrian experience. And I realize this has a lot to do with the West Main evolution or lack thereof, but one thing, your lighting plan doesn't really address is actually how the sidewalk gets lit, right?
Well, there will be streetlights.
And do you have any idea what the distribution of those is likely to be, or not really?
And are those, I forget if I think in fact, they're probably located on a civil plan that we have. And that was not.
I was just wondering like how they relate to your tree locations and that sort of thing,
So I think the team is actively working on that layout because I know that Whitney actually had a call with the civil engineer last week, and I believe they actually discussed some of that because at one point we weren't really sure what the jurisdiction was going to be on, who got to sort of decide how that was going to work. So I don't know if Whitney can chime in right now and maybe tell us where she is with that, but I do know that we're sort of actively trying to figure out who gets to sort of make that call or how that's going to work.
I'm checking with her to see if we have a civil plan. Okay, she's saying that we can propose the location of the lights.
So, yeah, so obviously we would look to make that work out with the trees as well, for sure.
I have a related question to the trees, and I think it's as much it's probably even more important maybe to the pedestrian experience, and is that how I'm not sure what the division of labor is between what you guys do and what this city will be in charge of, but how are those tree pits going to be constructed? What's the current thinking? And will they receive more than this, looks like about 4 foot by 4 foot tree pit that they're shown in plan?
So, Breck, that's a great question. I don't really have enough detail right now to provide a good answer, but I can tell you just based on my own path, I would really push to get the best possible tree detail going here. Which I realize is not necessarily the best answer right now, but we are looking to, really make sure these trees are going to thrive and be planted in a way that they won't be doing what the Zelkovas are doing right now, which look like they basically were planted with, thongs around their trunks. I mean, it's terrible. They're totally choked out in these little curb sections, and it's almost painful walking by them, looking at them. So, we want this to become really an environment and not just a sort of facade. We want it to be active and alive as much as we can make it. And so I think, there is a condition here with the space of the sidewalk, of course, and the curb, but the real, benefit can come in both the depth of the pit and what happens actually underneath the sidewalk and the edges as well. So I will really be pushing to make that detail a good one.
Okay. Yeah, I'll come back to some more of that when we get to comments.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Similar or on the same theme. Does your site plan work? Do you guys know where the power poles are going?
At present, the power poles are not scheduled to be relocated. We will temporarily relocate the power across the street as we did at 600 West Main. But right now, Dominion has control over all of that, and there isn't any plan to redo those. They're not in our purview.
So I guess, do you guys have a drawing that shows where they currently exist?
I think our existing civil plan, and perhaps Whitney, we can pull from the civil plan that drawing the current, the site plan that is at the city for review. Maybe you can email that to me. I can pull that up.
If you go down to the page that I showed the Zelkovas on, can you see them on that plan? I realize it's kind of cropped.
No, I see the line that says OHP, but I don't see poles.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing something.
No, I mean, this was directly from the civil plan, so. I think they're right in front of that. I think there's one right in front of that third tree down right there. See OHP, they connect right there, and there's a little, and then the other line goes back out. I think there's one right there.
Yeah.
Okay,
you can kind of see them in the picture too, if you go down to the picture. So there's one there. Oh, go back up. So there's one right there, and then there's another one just down from it, the black street light. And then there's another pole just past that.
Yeah,
so that's what that is. That's a pole that's a pole in the middle. I mean, that's a black street light in the middle and two poles on either end with the OHPs going to either side.
I guess I'm just, your trees they currently work around those. Is that safe to assume?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, kind of roundabout there.
No, that's okay. I mean, we've been talking about obviously things being buried as well, and there's a little bit of back and forth on that part too. And I do apologize. I actually was not able to make the civil call last week with the team, so I know some of these things were discussed, and that's why I rely on Whitney to chime in here if there's anything we're not getting at that we're spending too much time on.
And continuing this theme, so when the power lines were supplemented for the adjacent property, and moved around. A lot of the trees on this property got a bit of a haircut. One of the healthiest Zelkova on all of West Main Street is directly across the street in front of the Albemarle Hotel. Does that face a similar fate? Is that going to be pruned back severely to allow power lines to be played around with?
I don't think any of us can answer that one,
Mhm.
Carl, at all. I'm sorry. Can't speak for whatever the power company is going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say that on some level, I could put something in my plan to dictate all of these things, but it falls into so many different purviews of Dominion or West Main Streetscape or City of Charlottesville's street trees or, different things. I mean, it's just hard to be able to, because I really want trees along Main Street as well. And I want them to live and be beautiful and go on for decades. So I appreciate what you're getting at, Carl, because I do like the trees there as well.
I'm sorry, I know I've asked you guys about the power poles before, but I mean, the tree kind of, it's become obvious recently that it was
Right.
Probably in the line of fire. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff or the rest of the team? Okay, any comments from the public?
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, comments from the board.
Just had one quick one. You're showing us the lighting plan of the facade, the street facade. I believe I saw this correctly, that the light that you're putting on the railing to shine down on the terrace will not continue across the gap.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Thanks, James. That is correct. It would only be on that portion of the upper balcony that is solid.
Okay, I like that, and I just like to emphasize the importance of that detail.
Yep.
To keep that gap. So thank you.
I also have a comment. I'm just thinking, you were talking about enlivening the facade with the residential use, but it would also seem that there ought to be some sort of lighting strategy for backlighting all of the commercial glass along the street level, so that at nighttime it maintains its life on the street, which obviously will also help with the street lighting to some degree. But it seems to me that that's pretty critical, at least sort of during the active hours of the street.
Just so that I'm clear on what you're suggesting, Tim, that is that there be some sort of requirement for lighting, that the retailers light their store from within at night, even when they're closed.
At least directly behind the glass, whether there's a display or something that dissolves the glass and gives it some sparkle.
Got it.
And then that was one thing. And then the other thing, and I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but it seems to me like the entrance, the scale of the entrance, I mean, I think the curving wall and all that's very intriguing, but it feels to me like it ought to at least, even if the actual punch is, basically that one-story plate, but that it ought to read more like maybe a two-story move, because it feels too much like, when I first saw it, my first reaction was too much of a scale of a garage opening, and that it didn't really kind of emphasize that kind of entry condition. And I don't think it's a matter of program. I think it's really more a matter of how you handle the sort of the verticality of that. It just feels, because it almost implies like a Corbusian kind of volume underneath but that would be a building where, it would read more horizontally for that to work. I don't know. Just seems to me like that the lower two floors ought to read as of a piece with that, and whether, how you handle that, I'm not sure, but because I know you have a program issue there, but I just think the scale of it reads a little funny to me as it currently exists. Particularly that, just because I don't think it's bold enough. I am, again, concerned about color. I mean, I think signage and things like that in the windows will certainly help. And then, yeah, and then the only other thing I was just going to say is I thought that to my mind, the best image in terms of describing the building, I'm just saying this is an aside, is on page 63, where you really get a read of the sense of the frame and how the window outlines work.
Yeah.
It's sort of, very like Tarani like really. Anyway, I guess to my mind, that describes the sort of the sense of the facades best of all the images. But I'm just concerned about, I think the front entrance needs to be bolder in a vertical sense of the word. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. I think we're, with a big building on West Main Street, there's always reservations. There's always gonna be things that I think we want to see that are improved and better. And we could continue this, iteration over and over and over again. But I do think, I mean, Jeff, this facade has a lot of depth to it. And I think that's actually, it's great. I don't think I've seen a project yet come before the BAR that has this much depth and detail in it. I mean, the amount of brickwork and I think as far as I'm concerned, I think you've done a very good job with the building. I know I picked on you a lot for color on the neighboring building, but that was kind of graphite on graphite. I think with this lighter color scheme, that doesn't bother me as much. I think it does seem more in keeping with Main Street. So really my only concerns are, it's the trees, and I don't know where to fall on that, because I think we're just going to be stuck with what we're stuck with. And unfortunately, City Council didn't want to give us a revised West Main Street, with, they have lots of good reasons for that, and we can only spend so much money on making this, on things in the city. So schools won out, but it's so maybe it's just something we have to live with. So I think it would be great to, I don't know how we're going to handle your brick samples and color samples. We'll have to figure that out, because we really can't partially approve something. But I think I would be ready to vote approval for this building, maybe with some additional conditions. I'm going to ask for a condition for the trees, that they, I can bring that up later. But yeah, that would be the main one.
Can I speak to that issue too, Carl? Both my comments are related.
I'm sorry.
I think, I mean, getting these trees to be successful is really critical to the city and to the success of this building. For me, this is a species that should do well, and should be, if they're healthy and happy, will get considerably larger than they're shown in the renderings, which is a good thing. So Jody, for this building on the north side of the street, I would rather have 4 really good healthy trees than 5 kind of miserable ones. Not that that's the option that we have before us. I say that to really encourage, every method possible to give as much soil volume, or even connected soil volume, to those trees along Main Street, so that they do thrive. I think if they did, that they will come very close to creating that continuous canopy, even at the spacing that they're shown.
I defer to you, Breck. I'm just reacting to what the renderings show, and so I defer to you.
Related to the brick that I think is going to be, it's the main material of this entire building. It's going to be what makes it. While I'm with Carl, I'm supportive of this project. I think it's come in a great distance, and be a really great contribution to the city. But getting that brick is, as we all know, is so important. And I do feel uncomfortable having such an important piece be so kind of unproven. So I guess the question or that I put to maybe first to the board and to Jeff, and then to Jeff Warner, and then to Jeff Dreyfus is what could that review really mean? I mean, we've been put in situations before where we've reviewed samples after approval, but the brick order's already been placed, or there's no time in the construction sequence. What real capacity would we have together with the architecture team when reviewing those samples, and what's appropriate within the way our ordinance is written and the way we can review items after a certificate of appropriateness has been given?
Well, I'll only speak for myself in that no brick order has been placed and no brick order will be placed until we get a vote from the BAR that this brick is acceptable. We're not going to play that game, and we don't intend to. Approval of the design contingent upon final approval of the brick, to me, seems reasonable. I don't know if that's possible within the guidelines or the rules, but we are working hard to get samples done. And it would be our intention to set up a variety of times when the members of the board can come, and we would meet at the Allied Brickyard and look at them together. Leave you to your own thoughts if you want, but we are ready and willing as soon as they're there to meet with you all one-on-one or however best works, as soon as we can, to discuss them and review them. That's the way, that's how I would appreciate being able to proceed if that's even possible.
I would also just like to add that, we're kind of in extraordinary times right now with regards to delivery of anything. And I think we have to, to my mind, we have to grant some degree of flexibility here for that very reason. Just building materials right now are so ridiculously difficult to comprehend. Some Marvin windows, Marvin's a major window manufacturer. Some of their windows are running 6 months behind on some jobs I know, which is ridiculous. That's what it used to be for, a super custom, Zellick or Tischler window or something like that was, 10 times more expensive. And right now, they just can't even get glass. So anyway, I just think we need to bake in some flexibility on that level.
Related to the mock-up, one thing that occurs to me, Jeff Dreyfus, is that if there's a way to also mimic or study the uplighting, I really like the lighting strategy of emphasizing the hyphens and that texture. And I think it could be absolutely incredible or jarring, depending on the angle. I'm just thinking of sharp angles, uplit. It could be a little bit much, but I think that you'll find that pretty quickly and when the mock-up is made. And I hope that what you're imagining happens.
I think that's a very good point, Breck. We can use the mock-up to then test a number of options there, regardless of all of the programs that we and our lighting consultant can use. It would be much better to test it before it goes in the ground and get that angle right.
Other comments from the board?
Sorry.
Just real quick on the brick, did you mention the mortar color?
The mortar, James, is going to be as close a match to the brick itself as we can get. We're for the portion that comes forward, we really want that to be very quiet, and so we're not looking for contrasting mortar. And we'll be raking that same color mortar in the hyphens. So
Okay.
that's
I mean,
the
that's
intent.
good. That was my takeaway from the material sample palette
Yep.
slide.
The other thing I was just going to say, as far as the lighting is concerned, is given that you're dealing with a very specific color and a very specific objective in terms of how you're going to shadow it, it seems to me that we might want to grant you some flexibility there in terms of exactly what the color range is for that light.
Okay.
And the same goes for the plaster. I mean, I don't know whether that's going to have any kind of a multivalent surface to it, or it's something that you might play with there, or if it's just straight out, does it have mica in or anything like that, or is it?
That wasn't the intention at this point. A
Okay.
relatively flat, very simple surface there, in contrast to the brick, because this is sitting within the textured brick wall.
Right. Okay. Just I could see, since you only have 3 locations you're lighting like that, maybe you have some sort of a DMX controller or something in there, so you really
Yes,
can fine tune the color as well
Yeah.
as.
that would be my hope.
Tim, what are we gonna do? The board's gonna do without our lighting guru?
I thought you could have just call
I
in
know where
from
he
time.
lives. Yeah.
No, I have all my lights off right now, so you won't be able to find me.
I noticed that last night. I was like, either Tim just doesn't want, trick-or-treaters to come, or he's not around. So I know the question was raised to circle through BAR and then ask me what I thought. So if you don't mind, I can just throw in my 2 cents. And I will say, given the situation with the sample panel at next door, and was unfortunately a steep learning curve for me on that one, and I think it's what led to some of the questions that direction we've gotten from city attorney's office on how to handle these things. So I understand this is an iterative process, and I understand that the collaboration is necessary, but when it comes to how should you all make a decision, and I'm hoping the attorney on the committee can chime in whenever necessary, but the answer I would get from the city attorney would be, if it's not something that you can approve, then don't approve it. If there's something you want to see in order to approve it, then request that. So as far as direction from the city, I can't yes or no, 0 or 1, black or white answer. So, and I think this is one of the challenges we have with, we have a set of design guidelines, and now we're really talking details, and there's that push and pull of is a conceptual drawing, is a rendering of more value than a detailed drawing. James, you asked about the mortar joints. We have projects where we don't even ask about anything about the brick or the mortar. So there's I think the challenge for you all is this building conceptually what you all are looking for? Second, I would say you have a list of things that come from your recommendations to council for the special use permit. Those were what you identified as really critical. They were broad, but they can be applied in detail. But I think use that list, and it's in the staff report. As far as looking at a sample panel, I would be clear on what it is that you're hoping to see or not see, or what is too far, what is not far enough, and so that the sample panel is expressing what you all are interested in looking in first. Second, when that sample panel is ready, what actions are you all looking to make? Are you looking to possibly say, gee, that's not what we thought, start over? or are you looking to make collaborative adjustments to that, what's presented?
Jeff,
So-
can I,
so
can I,
That's where my advice.
can I try this out on you? In this case, we're not trying to evaluate options. I think, Jeff and his team have bent over backwards to try to show what this building will look like. I don't think anybody's really confused about that. We just have everything except for the actual material. So in my mind, we could vote on the material that has been presented with the stipulation that a review of a panel confirms that it reflects what was presented tonight. I think that's what that Jeff and his team are asking us to do. And maybe that framing limits the concern about having some kind of contingent. So it is an approval, but if the board felt upon visiting the sample panel that it didn't reflect what was presented tonight, then we'd ask that it be submitted as a change as a modification to the approval.
Yeah,
Would that be a
that's where-
formal vote subsequent in the next month then on once we look at the material? Or how would that work?
Only if there was I guess
Change.
a change. If we felt it was not what we were presented.
Okay.
I mean, in the past, we've said, Jeff will review something to see if it conforms to what's been described to us. So in a sense, we're kind of doing that again. It's just Jeff is going to have all of you guys take a look at it. To give them
And
advice.
to that point, there is a material that is shown and called out in the documents that you have. And so if you're approving it based on that and, contingent upon, and if we need to come back with something else and it's not what you expected, then we would have to come back and request a change.
Is it fair to say that it's also just the texture that everyone is concerned with, or is it the material itself you want to be confirmed?
I'm asking all that if there's, and I appreciate what Breck just said. So, you approve things all the time with conditions, and what happens is if that condition isn't met, and when I review the construction drawings, I will not sign off on the building permit. So we have that check. The point is that it's when that you all are very, very clear in what Breck said. The panel reflects what is presented tonight. So what is it specifically that when we look at it, I look at it, that what am I comparing it against specifically? Because that's where we got, and I know I'm trying to belabor this, but it is helpful to have the discussion. And I don't want to go through what went through with the panels next door, and I don't want to run afoul of the process. So may I suggest just a 5-minute break, clear our heads, give us some thought. I know my head's elsewhere for a moment, and come back and frame this in a way that says, that approving this, if that's where the BAR is heading, under the condition that the following is presented, and will be reviewed for consistency with however you wish to characterize it, and that if then, because it can't be a vote, it has to be something we can make a decision on, and then the process by which if something in that wall is different or changes, then it would have to come back as a,
Yeah, I don't think it has to be that
resubmittal.
tricky. I think we're looking for color and texture is consistent with what's been presented tonight. And the other one for me is that the texture of the textured panel is sufficient to create the distinction between the hyphens and the masses that in the way that the project has been presented.
Yeah, we're just trying to confirm that, what is in front of us now matches what the physical versions.
I understand, and I'm not trying to make your lives complicated or more difficult. I just want to make sure that when you go out there and we look at it, and if there is any question on that, then the default to Jeff and his team is that they must do the following. So that there's no, I mean, you know.
But at the same time, in fairness to them, it has to be, I don't know if egregious is the right word, but like beyond reason, right? Like if it is reasonably in accordance with what they're submitted tonight, they're good to go. Like it has to be very different. You know, we can't nitpick a sample panel that is the materials they're proposing tonight and the color and the texture they're proposing tonight. You know, it'd have to be a glazed brick in a Flemish bond and, you know, red. And then we say, wait a minute, this isn't what we saw.
And I would not be expecting Jeff to be advocating, you know, really sloppy execution either, just for the record, right? So I think it's really, you know, we're going into much greater detail with this than we do with, you know, a lot of projects, right? But that's also because we trust what Jeff is saying. And, you know, I think basically there's some professional courtesy here that we believe what he's attempting to do will work, but he just has to confirm it.
Right. Well, I appreciate Jeff's suggestion for a break, but I feel like we could be really close to a motion here if others feel the same. Anybody want to take a stab?
I think Carl does.
All right, let me, I actually do have it pulled up, don't I? Okay. Having considered the standards set forth within city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed new mixed-use building at 612 West Main Street satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the West Main Street ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted with the condition that the BAR needs to see a sample panel for the brick to confirm the color, texture, and sufficient differentiation between the hyphen areas and the projected portions of the building. Also, with the condition that the street trees are a necessary component of this project certificate of appropriateness, and that the certificate of appropriateness for the entire project is not valid without them. Should at any time the trees need to be removed or the species change, the applicant will be required to return to the BAR for a new certificate of appropriateness. So I know it's harsh, but that's, you know, you guys need to control the city somehow. Yeah, for what that's worth, however that's possible. Tim, sorry.
And then do you want to addressing Breck's question about the lighting of the textured brick? Do you want to include that as a part of the sample discussion?
I think that's gonna be hard for us to review.
Okay, that makes sense.
If Breck, do you want to add that amendment?
No, I think they'll need to study that on their own. I don't.
And really on the building, frankly. So the to see in there is something about backlighting the first floor windows.
Oh, yeah. That we recommend that you consider backlighting the retail windows to provide additional lighting at night.
And just to make the street work correctly at night. Yeah.
Second.
My last meeting and you don't even give me
I'm
a
sorry.
seconded. Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
Second.
I retract my second.
It's the Carl and Tim show for the rest of the night.
So now in the building, if something goes wrong, you can blame the two BAR members.
It's BAR, yes.
The staff had suggested that we specify when we say as submitted, that we say per the drawings that were submitted on December 17th. Because
Drawings dated December
dated,
17th.
I'm sorry, dated September 17th, yeah,
And included in the BAR packet.
as opposed to the ones that were earlier for this meeting submission.
Thank you, Sherry. I accept that amendment.
Thank you.
Tim, do you accept that amendment?
Yeah, well, actually, I would say printed at 4:10 p.m. on December 17th, if you really want to get specific.
Can I
Okay,
ask
what-
a quick question, actually, about your piece about the trees, Carl? If they need to change location for any reason, is it just in number and in species? That is what you're asking for? If for some reason I have to move something because something's going to be underground or something's happening, that's okay, but it's just the species and the number?
Yeah, and it is. I am mostly concerned with the species and the number.
Okay.
So yeah, we got to figure out how to. I mean, shoot, I just dig a hole. I may have.
Well, there are changes to sometimes that are required to be made, but that doesn't mean that that the certificate of appropriateness is invalid.
Okay, I just, because he sort of used some of
Yeah.
that verbiage, and so I just wasn't sure exactly how far that would extend. So
I
I just
did-
wanted to
I
put
I
Carl's-
did use that verbiage, and I may need to revise that verbiage. But the
What you're
concern
saying
is that
is-
it needs to come back to the BAR for us to. Can we amend the COA? Call it that, or what's the?
Well, what you're saying is, and the risk is that, and you know, what Ann's referring to is when the site plan goes through its process and suddenly, because of what's underground or overhead or whatever, something gets moved. So I think there is the question, I would phrase it as if it's unrelated to, requirements of the site plan review. So.
But that's what I'm worried about is if the
Well, I
site
know,
plan
and
review deletes a
right.
tree. Is there a way that it comes back to us for, and maybe it's not a complete COA, but I mean, it is. We need to amend the COA.
Well, generally, if something comes through in the site plan and they start changing things, I say, well, then I've got to bring it back to you. I mean, it hasn't happened much
It's happened
recently.
twice in.
Yeah, I
your-
mean, in my tenure, yeah, it has
Yeah.
occurred, but it's something that I've sort of learned to understand a little bit. But I think that I don't know. The correct answer is I don't know. But I was trying to get at what you were saying, whether it was a sort of a decision to move something. But if it's something that the city says must move, and then Jeff and Ann say, "Well, God, now we got to go back to the BAR." I don't know how to.
But
filter
are
that.
we, I think, Carl, your note says, should at any time the trees need to be removed or the species changed, then we have to go back to you. We still
Yeah.
need we still need 4 trees. That's part of the site plan. They may shift a little bit. You're not saying if they get moved.
Okay.
You're saying if they get removed.
That's correct. That's how I phrased that. Yes. So
And
maybe that does.
And that's fine. That's exactly what I want to clarify, because I know in real time, as much as I want them to relate to the building, I even just last week was talking about the gas line with the civil engineer, and there might be subtle changes to locations.
Okay.
So I just want to know what the flexibility within that is. The only other thing that comes up sometimes, although I doubt it would with such sort of small trees going in, but sometimes it's just availability of tree species or really finding good, healthy ones. And the Valley Forge, I think, should be pretty consistent at this point, but there's sometimes issues where you do have to change, but then even then I'd have to go back through the city too. So really we try and pick these things and avoid having to go back and do amendments on anything. So it's really more about the location and the flexibility within being able to work it around if I need to.
So I think Jeff Dreyfus, thank you for catching that, because the language did say removed or species changed. Personally, I don't I don't know a whole, I mean, I'm familiar with tree species, but I'm personally not wed to these elm trees. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels if we leave that language like that, or if we change it to changed from a large shade tree, or, I mean, is an elm, it is classified as a large shade tree, correct? Or is it a medium one on the tree list?
No, it's a
I don't know what,
canopy.
you
It's a
know,
canopy, large
Yeah.
canopy.
You've
think
got
we need to- I
utilities
think-
overhead as well, so I don't know. There are different tree species that, if they underground the utilities at a later date, does that change what you refer to in the tree list? I just don't know.
I think if the species changes, that we need to know about that. I'd leave it the way that it was given.
Okay.
So the way it is now, even without your condition, Carl, if something changed in the site plan, I would come back to you all to discuss it. As a function of it being a resubmittal, I don't know how to phrase that or word that, but if something changes from the site plan, it would come to you. And given our, what's going on in West Main and what's not going on in West Main, paying particular attention to this. Just so you all know, talking with Jeff about 2118 West Market Street, conversation was had, I don't know, maybe it was a month or so ago, where the fire marshals were raising questions about the trees at that project. So there's a lot going on in the site plan review that I hopefully they've gone far enough along to at least have some idea where things can and can't go. But this is exactly, Carl, what you were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, and why we can let you.
I doubt anybody reads the, when Robert issues the our BAR actions to a whole host of people at NDS. I'm guessing nobody reads that, but supposing someone does, it just kind of, I was hoping there was something that they could see this, or if, when this building is complete and the trees aren't there for whatever reason, it's easier to, there's at least something to point and say, look, guys, this was here. Yet, city engineer, whoever's doing the site plan review, why are you still doing this? Yeah. Why is this still happening?
Yeah. May I jump in with one friendly suggestion? I realize I'm out of order here, but the word new certificate of appropriateness scares me a little bit. Is it possible to change that to an amended certificate of appropriateness? You all have been incredibly patient and helpful as we've gone through this process. And I'd like it to be clear that if that happens, they're removed or the species changed, we need to return to amend the certificate of appropriateness to reflect those changes. I'll stop there.
Jeff,
think that's a
I'm
reasonable
fine with that,
suggestion.
if that makes sense with the whole difference between an amended and new. I'm not.
I think that's closer to the reality.
I think amended is a better term as well.
I am fine with that.
Thank you.
Whoever's capturing this, is that being?
Yes.
What you're, and what you're saying.
I can reread it if you like.
Well, what you're saying, and Jeff, I agree, is that any changes should be reported to the Board of Architectural Review and properly recorded for the archive. So for the BAR records, so that it. But I'm not in a position to say that you all can. I mean, I believe that an applicant can come back and have a discussion with you all, like we did with the project down on William Taylor Plaza, where they came in, we had a conversation, and we solved the problem, and it became part of the record. It didn't call it a new COA or didn't call it anything. We just called it a solution to a problem. So I think that there's got to be a level of trust here that and we've got one more project with Jeff coming up on West Market Street, where maybe we'll have this down, but I can't give you an answer that I can't give you. If the council would say, if you're not ready to approve it, don't. If they want to change something later, then it comes back as just like with the gate at the code building. And there are some reasonable things which you all know we have addressed in the
Right.
line of construction.
which we vote upon. Yeah, that's an amended, we vote upon that amendment. It's not just for the record.
Right, we voted on the code gate change.
It was a separate COA request.
Chair, can I call the question?
Yes,
Let's
please.
move on.
I agree. I think I think as I followed the conversation, I think we're still in the same, we've still got the same proposed language from Carl, with the one change of saying as amendment to the COA, if there are any substantive changes to either the removal or a change of species for the trees. And we have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Second.
Okay. I will call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes,
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Merry
Jack.
Christmas, Jeff.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for all of your time and all of your input. We're looking forward to getting this built. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Jeff,
Thank you,
and
everyone.
we'll see you.
And thanks. I know there was the promise of a little break in there. I thought we were so close. We were not as close as I thought, but
I
now we can
appreciate
get to a break.
Okay. Works for me.
5-10 minutes. What do you guys think? 5? Okay. Hey, Robert.
How are you? Are you looking forward to the holidays this week?
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's good.
Yeah.
I've been taking some grad school classes, and I had
Excellent.
finals last week, and that's a relief to be done with, but I still have to work on my thesis. So it's not that much of a holiday yet.
No, man. So
Yeah.
you'll be around?
Yeah. I'm going down. I'm going to my parents' house tomorrow. They live in Charlotte County, so just an hour and a half away. So,
Nice.
but I'll be back.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your following our circuitous motions.
Yeah. Well, somebody has to do it. So.
Tim, when are we got to get together and test your.
Yeah, we do. I think it's been close to 11 years. So, I had more hair then. So Jeff, what's the bow tie?
Like that?
Yeah.
It's, decided to, guys think I know the answers. I guess I should probably dress the part, you know.
But he's wearing boxers, just boxers.
Yeah, I did change into real pants. I took the sweats off. I said I can't wear a coat and bow tie with a sweats, but I do have Crocs on. I appreciate that situation, and I mean, fortunately, you know, we know Jeff, and we worked with Jeff, and it was an approval, but it's I just sent you guys. I just sent Breck and Carl a note and said we're gonna have to give Carl a special BAR commission as a board member emeritus and make him stay on to help us solve all these questions about the site plans and things. But
I feel like you guys are going to be overjoyed because in January your meeting is going to take half as long.
please.
I don't know.
No.
We're not
Carl,
gonna
we
be
can
getting there
always
yet.
call in suggestions.
Yeah, I can be a member of the public now. Really annoying.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, there was never public questions or public comments. Well, that could change.
I was very much going to suggest that after the meeting we go to Tim's darkened house for a traditional BAR celebration, but I can't. I was my niece's wedding last weekend, and over the course of the past several days, it sounds like one by one people are reporting COVID. So, but my brother, his wife, my niece, Katie thought she was ill from working at the treatment facility she works at, but they had a lot of patients got it, but she does not have it. We don't have any symptoms, but we sort of out of an abundance of caution have been quarantining. So,
Goodness.
but
Wow.
Tim, we will arrange something. I don't know what Greek letter of the alphabet we'll have to get to, but at some point,
Zeta.
yeah, we will all get together and complete the celebration and the BAR, your BAR stint as we should. Just close all my windows here that I was going through and stuff. So if we're ready to jump back in.
Yeah, we're missing James and
Jody, and there's Jody.
So, all right, while they're sitting, we do have two new, three new BAR members. Sherry was reappointed, and it was good. I helped her put up, vote for Sherry signs all in the hall during study hall. So they worked. David Timmerman, who most of you know, Carlton, I think it's Carlton, Clayton Strange, who's an architect and currently a professor at the university, was appointed. So those are the two architects. And then Hunter Smith, who most of us know as the Champion Beer Guy, was appointed as a business owner. He has businesses on actually within the downtown ADC district. So that was his, because Champion is not within a district. So we'll be reaching out to them and getting them tied in. Just so you all remember, the January meetings and the February meeting are on Wednesday nights because of the Monday holiday. Breck and Sherry, I'll be talking to you about the city council appeal. I need to wrap that up this week, at least get it drafted. So, and I see.
I think we've got critical mass.
All right, good.
We might have lost James. He had said he was going to.
Well,
He might not last, but anyway, I think we ought to move on to the next.
He was
item.
getting mauled by small children. I miss those days, you know. Will came home the other night and he's like 2 or 3 inches taller than me. So no more goofy little kids. All right. This is a preliminary discussion because of the cost involved, but also there are some questions that I believe Danielle is, I think this is hers, or no, Ashley, this is Ashley's project. So but just very quickly, this is 540 Park Street within the North Downtown ADC district. You know, this is a house that had the copper roofing put on a couple years ago. And the question is about there's, for some reason, the city designated the pool house as a contributing structure. I don't know why. I laid this out in the staff report. I see no reason to. It was constructed, it appears, sometime after 2000. So I don't think, unless you all know of something I don't know, there's no reason to say this can't be demolished. However, because of the ordinance, we still have to treat it as demolition of a contributing structure. But I don't see any issues with the approval of that, again, unless you all saw something with it. So there's the question of an addition on the rear of the house. There's the construction of a new pool house, and then there's some landscaping and I believe some screening or on the front porch. So I'm going to let is Ashley on? Robert?
Yes, I'm here. Can you?
Okay, good.
Yeah,
And
hi.
and I think so. The goal is, not to we don't have to get into every detail here. It really is, Ashley, what questions do you have that you would like, some feedback on the BAR on, and you all on the BAR, realizing, we are going to have some new members, but sort of the idea here being, if anything you see, any suggestions you have that help Ashley prepare this for an approvable request in the next few months. So I'm going to hand it off to Ashley, and all yours.
Ashley, I'll scroll through Ashley and just let me know if you need me to go to a different page.
Before I dive in, we do have Mary Wolf on the call, and I believe she's dialed in as an attendee. I just want to make sure, is she going to be able to turn her mic on, or is she?
I just promoted her, so she should
okay.
be able to now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Zoom logistics.
And if I just, for a minute, I just want to, it came up in the last discussion, but the reason Robert and I can't let people have the screen for whatever a decision was made, that we can't allow that. So
yeah, it's just the communications policy.
Right.
Yeah,
So another thing
sense.
to tinker with in the coming months, but just so we're not being rude. All right.
Of course. Yeah, I just want to make sure she'll be able to chime in here. Okay, so the first couple of pages, we're looking at sort of the architectural piece. We're highlighting in red there, the existing pool house footprint, our proposed demolition of that structure, along with an existing exterior stair that was added in 2005 when this porch on the east side was altered and enclosed. So I think part of that east addition it predated the 2005 alteration to it, but that exterior stair was added in 2005. Just to make sure we're all oriented on this drawing. To the south, south is down on the sheet, and that is Farish Street running across the bottom edge there. And we're not showing the full site, but up the left side, the west is Park Street. So we're talking about the east rear facing portion of the site for our architectural interventions here. And you can see the existing pool and storage building there on the corner of Farish. And as Jeff mentioned, both of the small outbuildings are identified as contributing, the existing pool house and the storage building. The storage building appears to be much older, referred to as a garage also, I think. And then the pool house, we think, is built sometime between 2000 and 2002. So yes, sorry, if you want to go to the next page there. You can see our proposed new pool house overlaid there with the footprint of the existing. And we've hatched in the east addition because we are proposing some shell alterations to that addition. We're keeping the same footprint, but enclosing more of the shell. And you'll kind of see in the elevations a little more information about what we're planning there. So if you want to go to the next sheet and turn it over to Mary, and she can talk about the landscape plan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Wolf with Wolf Josie Landscape Architects. Just to zoom out a little bit and look at the full site in context, we're proposing with the landscape to essentially kind of renovate and maybe upgrade some of the existing hardscape on the site. In front of the house along Park Street, we're proposing to rework some existing paths that lead from Park Street to the front of the house, basically with repaving and realignment. So currently there are 2 entrances into the front lawn from Park Street. We're proposing to remove one of those and change the material of the paths, which are currently crushed stone, which is starting to wash quite a bit. The front lawn slopes at about a 10% grade from Park Street to the front of the house. So, so we're proposing upgrading and realigning the paths, creating a landing in the front of the house. Currently, there's a crushed stone landing, which is also being washed away by drainage. So we'll create a hardscape in front of the front porch, which will require us to raise the grade slightly in that area. Along Ferris Street, we're proposing similar hardscape renovations and upgrades just to improve the circulation from the parking along Ferris Street to the various entries into the house. At the new addition off the back, we're proposing to keep the existing pool, try to work with keeping the existing paving, and then adding paving to accommodate the changes with the pool house. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see some of the existing alignments in the front of the house. The paths curve down towards the front door, and we're proposing to straighten the paths out. And then again, sort of upgrade and improve the path circulation along the Fair Street side of the house, along the south side of the house. These are some existing photos of the crushed stone paths that currently exist. Some of the stepping stones around the house. So these are the main hardscapes we're proposing to replace.
All right, so kind of dipping back into the architectural, we have these elevations of the existing house, and we've highlighted, bracketed out the footprint of the existing addition, and we're working within that footprint. And you can see sort of the character of that 2005 addition on the existing 1900s house. You can flip to the next sheet. So we are keeping the lower level of that addition with some fenestration opening changes, but the structure we're keeping, and then we are altering the shell up above, expanding the square footage on the second level. So essentially we're having, the whole footprint will be sort of extruded, lower level, first floor, second floor. And the character will be more modern for this edition. We are planning to use a smooth finish stucco and picking up on the same material palette from the existing house. So paint colors and copper roof, continuing the same paint for sort of the lower level, darker contrast, picking up the darker color for the shutters. We're proposing a clad window and door in a darker color. And then we've also highlighted here proposed removable screen panels on the west side of the house. So realizing that we would want something that could be easily removed, we would be pretty cautious about how we interact with the existing porch columns. And we're talking about using a copper screening there. So if you want to go ahead to the next sheet. So we're looking, this is the east view of that addition. And as you can see, we're kind of returning to a window wall ratio that's actually a little more similar to the existing house and keeping the vertical proportions. I loved in the one page historic description of this house, some of the wording, it was talking about the vertical massing of the original house and described it as being noble and serene, which I thought was really lovely. And it mentioned the bucolic landscape. So I think we're kind of jumping off of that a little bit. We're trying to keep that sort of vertical proportion and a serene effect, despite going a little more modern with this addition. We're feeling like it's going to be pretty complementary to the existing house. If you go onto the next page. So here are a couple elevations of the proposed new pool house. South side would be facing the pool, the long edge. And we are really trying to get a dialogue going between the language of the revised edition and this pool house. It will be much lower profile compared to the existing pool house. And we've been talking with Mary about how it's really, this building is kind of more of a landscape element than the existing structure, which reads more as sort of a folly. And in the plan, you could see earlier, we are adjusting the kink that exists between the existing pool house and the house. We're kind of squaring off and really making this rear courtyard unified. here are some reference photos of the existing house. And this is the existing pool house that we're proposing demolition. You can also see the exterior stair in the top left corner there. And it's a very vertical, as you can see, it's small footprint, pretty vertical structure. And if you scroll back up to the previous page again for me, Robert, sorry. The south elevation from Ferris Street, actually, if you could zoom in on that, that's a key photo right there. You can see the existing pool house peeking up over the edge of the fence. It's pretty visible. And we're feeling like our proposed new pool house is going to be much lower profile and more linear, not as much of like an object, and more speaking to the landscape and that little courtyard in the rear. I think we can go to the last page. So here are some nearby properties for reference. Pretty diverse stylistically. One we left off, which is pretty helpful actually, is 614 Park Street, sitting pretty far back from the road, but it's, I believe, Kevin and Carrie Burke's residence, definitely more contemporary in style, and partially visible behind from this rear courtyard that we're talking about. So kind of interesting to think about putting something a little more modern next to one of the more modern structures that's already existing in this area of Park Street. So I think to prompt some discussion, we'd love any feedback on what you guys would want to see more of from us in a formal submission. I heard a bit earlier the discussion of how to handle material samples in the time of COVID. So any thoughts you have on things you would like to see and how we might be able to share those with you. And just kind of more logistically, what kind of application do you see this being? Should we submit a separate application for the demolition, a separate application for the new building, and even a third for the addition? Or how do you see these this project fitting into the application format?
Thanks, Ashley. Well, some of those application questions, they probably are best worked through with Jeff. I don't know that we're going to need to spend our time tonight with that, but thank you for the presentation. Anyone have any initial questions or comments?
So we're not doing the formal routine, right?
Right. This is just a preliminary review. So I don't
It's more like the way Carl and I would do it if left to our own devices. Well, two things. I think getting rid of the pool house, go for it. Number two, I know you're following the rules. Right now I'm looking at the east elevation of where you've brought the addition up, looking back toward Park Street. Yes. And I know you're following the rules by not.
Oh no, lost him.
Oh no.
That's one way to.
He's roasting with his mouth open.
Yeah, he does that in person too. It's kind of strange. I got to screen capture that to save it for posterity.
Can you do that?
I did it.
What's awful when that happens to you, he probably is still talking.
Yes.
Yeah, he's probably saying something really good right now.
I'll jump in really quickly because my sort of concern is hopefully not long to describe. I'd just like to see a lot of detail on the removable screens that you intend for the porch. Looks like he's jumped off and is getting back. And just to make sure that it doesn't destroy the existing structure, you know, how it's done. I know other owners in the neighborhood have, several of them have similar conditions. It just gets way too hot on those porches, especially in the late afternoon in the summer when it faces south and west. And I'd be just really curious what your solution, just have sort of bamboo-like roll down shades. So if you're really looking at something that's going to be completely covering up the historic structure and its elements, give us a lot of detail on that, please.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, just from a preliminary response, the intention is to create sort of an insect-proof screened dining area. So we haven't really gotten into the sun shading aspect, but that is something good to consider as well. And our goal would be to set the screens back so that the columns would still be expressed on the exterior and still get some depth to all that detail. But yes, absolutely, we could provide some more information.
I'll weigh in just briefly. I think remove the old pool house, should go. It won't be missed. And I also want to say that I do like the garden hardscape plan. I think it's lovely and creates a nice oasis that would be an addition to Park Street.
I'll chime in there. I have a couple comments about the landscape. I agree. It's refreshing to see this property get some attention. It has been at times that hedge at the front has gotten really big and tall, and this is really pretty beautiful house that is really hard to see from the street. And so I guess I would look to this plan for a couple of things. One, I think it could set a better precedent of how you could balance the need for privacy without walling off the public right-of-way, which a lot of properties have done over time. And secondly, there used to be some really massive trees in this yard, and its contribution to the city, the urban canopy, has gone down significantly. And I didn't see any proposed trees in the plan, but I think that would be a benefit to both the property and to the city.
Yeah, I failed to mention it's one of the a large black walnut along Park Street. We're proposing to take out. This is the only tree removal we're talking about at the moment.
The one that's leaning, or looks like it's
in pretty bad shape. Hanging right over the street and the power lines. Yeah. The property is pretty surrounded by large trees on all sides. Several ash trees, which the owners are treating for emerald ash borer. So, but we definitely, will consider tree additions as we can. There's most of the property in the back, as you can see, is hardscape and pool, and the owners would like to keep as much lawn area as possible in the front. And so that was one of the focuses for us, was to make that front lawn a little bit more functional. Working with grading it to some degree, just to sort of, there's a little bit of a hump in the lawn that will smooth down and try to bring it down to about a 5% grade. But definitely will be looking at tree additions around the perimeter of the front yard, knowing that the ash trees won't be there forever. And there are a couple of other trees that are not in great shape, but we're not proposing to remove at this time.
Sorry, Tim, we lost you mid-sentence. We don't know how far long you went.
My daughter's decided to reboot the router. So, you know, I miss all of Mary's wisdom, and obviously you guys only got a third of mine. I don't know how far I went, but all I was just saying is I think you could extend the roof down in the center if you wanted to without harming the design guidelines in terms of alignment. And the only reason I say that is just because that one stretch of chorus is in kind of a vulnerable spot. You know, that's all. It was just a technical observation. But anyway, but since I'm on, I think it's me and really does a good job of cleaning up a really messy condition at the back of the house, as well as that rather strange birdhousey, whatever that thing is. So that's my 10 cents.
Other comments from the board?
I also, my first impression of the addition in the back, I quite like it as well. It's nice and clean, and I think it does refer to what's there now. I think it would be a pretty nice addition.
Just say, Ashley, that so from where I sit, that we have reviewed demolition of outbuildings with part of the entire submittal, and I think under the circumstances with this one, it could be one request. I don't think there's any argument there. As far as materials and the conversation about 540 West Main, a little bit different with a commercial structure. I've yet to really have the BAR require a lot of physical examples, or if any, for something residentially. I guess images of good cut sheets of the doors and windows. Maybe something just so that we know what type of stone and you're thinking. I think don't think we need a sample of the stucco. Maybe a spec on what you're planning to put in. So I don't see anything here that I think BAR would ask for specific physical samples of. I do agree with what Sherry's saying is we do see, I have the same situation in my house trying to figure out how to screen the old back porch. But you do see these products where you can, glue something on, stick something on, Velcro it on, whatever. So that I think would want to see whatever the product is or however it's done, that it is, it could easily be attached to the historic material, but it doesn't, alter it. It doesn't become something permanent that's stuck onto it. So,
are you referring to the screens, Jeff?
Mm-hmm. On the front porch, yeah. So
I mean,
I'm just. Yeah. So from where I sit, I think if that helps you answer your question about what the submittal would be and what sort of materials. I think images will do just fine. Catalog cuts will do fine, unless and you all think otherwise.
In addition, any exterior lighting should be included in the submittal.
And no walk lights like the ones at Hard Bar.
What did Tim say?
What was that?
I don't like the driveway lights at Hard Bargain. You can see the light source all the time. It's right across the street from me.
But Tim's
Tim,
house
are
is
you coming
dark.
back next year?
Huh?
Are you coming back next year?
No. It's New Year next year. I'll just be a gadfly. Personally, I'd say you're just about there with your presentation. I don't really see you need to go much further than this. Than as Jeff said, confirm how you're going to detail the screen attachment on the old house, and the cut sheets for the windows, and I think you're there really.
I think the only detailed question, sort of anticipating what Carl might ask, would be where your plaster and the siding come together. What you're using a corner. What's that detail?
But Carl's not going to be on the board next month.
I know, but
And neither will you,
he's
Tim.
influenced me,
I know. So what do they?
That's why Jeff is going to ask the question.
right?
Okay,
He's
all right.
mentored me.
Any other questions you have for us, Ashley or Mary?
I can't think of anything.
No, I think that's.
Doug,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I had a
Thank
I
you.
had a
for your
question.
comment.
Right?
Mary?
Just a comment that's not particular to this discussion, but just because Ashley kind of asked us. I think it is quite possible for us to coordinate looking at materials during this time. And I was just going to suggest, I'm sure maybe other people, City Hall is effectively closed, not, no, they're not completely closed, but anyway, we're not sure if that's an option, but my office is downtown on High Street, and I wouldn't mind, if materials wanted to be dropped off, any member of the BAR could stop by. I think I'm in a pretty central location, and we're open during regular business hours. So just to offer that up, and I'm saying this to other members of the BAR just as a possibility, because I think it would have been good to have seen, and I'm sorry you had to sit through it, but to have seen some materials for the last project consideration that was pretty major. I mean, it's so not a pool house that's tucked behind a private home on Park Street, but it's a pretty significant project. So anyway, that's an option if we can figure out how to share those, I think.
I mean, also for that matter, they could just be on site, like in their in the park, the pull-off area for parking or something like that too.
Oh, you mean they can have a pool party for us in the spring?
I mean, not now, but
Not yet.
maybe it could be an ice skating party.
That's optimistic too.
I know. It's actually freezing in New York. So I think I'm gonna be able to play pond hockey up there soon. So
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, thank you
We're all good.
very much.
Ashley, thank you.
You.
Thank you.
It looks like there was one question in the chat about the dead walnut tree.
Yes, would typically would be included in the landscape plan.
Yes, my question was really, if it's dead and dangerous, can't they go ahead and take it down?
It's leaning. I mean, I even asked Mike Ronayne about it. And we're talking about the one at the corner of Park and Farish, right, Ashley? Yeah,
When they showed me the
It's
picture,
right along Park Street. It's not.
How big is it?
sorry, they had a picture of it. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to prolong the conversation. I just was trying to cut some red tape. If it's a
Ralph
dead
Damon
tree,
might want it.
It would be great if we could go ahead and remove the tree.
I mean, the picture they showed, it looked like the other trees have leaves on them, and that one's looks like a buzzard
Right.
tree.
You could really see the decline. And then it lost a huge limb, I think, this summer. But the bulk of the tree right now is overhanging the street and, the sidewalk and power line. So it's a hazard.
Well, just out of curiosity, if it's a hazard currently, wouldn't you go to the arborist and just ask them if it's okay to remove it and just forget about us?
Well, the city arborist doesn't
Process.
address private property trees, and we don't have a city arborist.
Good point.
Yeah, the reason I had asked was the tree that's overhanging Farish literally looks like the branches are laying on the power lines, but the tree hasn't moved. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that one, but but I would say actually, trimming up a tree, that's not something that we review. It's when you start chopping them down, and that the BAR, particularly when it comes to streets in a prominent location like this, we've had a lot of conversations about kind of trying to have a standard response, but typically if you would need a letter from an arborist explaining why that's what they would want to see, or the BAR. So, but no, the city arborist doesn't resolve issues on private property.
I just
Are you
note that-
asking for us
I mean, I
to
think
okay
it,
it? now?
No, I
I
don't
was
think
just
we can
curious.
okay it tonight, but I do think that, for a property that has a history of not coming to the BAR for things that have happened, big things that have happened on the property, it would be good to change that trajectory and include it in the project. And for anyone that's interested, you should go back and look at that tulip poplar that was in that front yard at one point. It's pretty incredible. But so I mean, suffice it to say that I think there's ample reason to remove potentially that tree. I think just keeping in mind and setting Park Street up for the next 50 to 100 years would be a good contribution of this project. All right, let's keep going. Thank you so much, Ashley and Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. All right, Robert, if you would pull up the those images I have for Water Street, and we can. So that's good there. So just, orient you all. This is the old Monoloco. It then became Moe's Barbecue. It's now been repainted gray. I'm fine with that, except, there's an awful lot of paint layers that are going on this old building. It's an old 30s Art Deco gas station. The wall is obviously new. The tent out front is new. Well, not new, I mean, in the sense of non-historic. And go ahead and scroll down, Robert. So what they're being asked to do, and so this is from looking at it, sort of looking west from the corner of 2nd Street on the left and Water Street on your right. So the most of the stuff that's in here is not a question. The question revolves around that new wall that I kind of dotted in there, and then there's a new entrance gate. I just added some notes on top of their handwritten notes. So the idea is to bring the existing stucco wall to the corner, then turn, and then have an entrance gate into a patio area. Again, not that complicated. However, go ahead and scroll down, Robert. And so the idea is, and there are other images in here, but these are images from Ron at, sorry, I'm blanking, the architect that's working on this. So the idea, the owner would like to do a Korean themed, Korean style restaurant, and to add to that a wall and a gate that follow that architecture. I think I summarized it in the staff memo. It's not, as far as what used to be on this site used to be a gas station, and you can hardly tell that anymore. So the context of the site itself, it's somewhat of a opportunity for something new. However, in the context of the downtown ADC district, the guidelines kind of box us into looking at what's to not introduce new elements, to look to existing examples. So this is a difficult one because
it's actually not very difficult, Jeff. I don't think there's any support for this in our guidelines whatsoever. It's a kind of a faux historicism and really a sign for a restaurant. I don't think it's pretty clear to me. I don't know if anybody feels like this is somehow gray area.
Well, first of all, I think actually the building is still, despite all the things that they've done to bastardize it, is actually very distinctive.
Yeah.
As a gas station.
Yeah. So I mean, it's and actually, Jeff, is that a wall or is it just a filled-in fence with a stucco on it? I didn't think that was actually a wall.
Yeah.
It is a wall.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's like a I think it's a block wall that's been parched and it's been there as long as I've lived here.
For some reason I thought it was like a reconstructed fence, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I think to my mind, this is a very cool structure and somebody could really do something with it. So I think it's going in totally the wrong direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's still got Art Deco detailing on the building itself. And adding a Korean gate out front doesn't make sense.
And this is a lot more character than any of the stuff along West Main, frankly.
Yeah.
Or even that, what was the diner down, the diner down on the corner? Jody, remember the one that had some sort of modern 50s detailing left in it, but not much?
Right.
I mean,
Yes, this is an Art Deco, streamlined modern gas station that is very distinctive, and it'd be lovely to really emphasize. And stop hiding it with these other faux superficial things.
There are several, I was on the BAR during all of the last applications in 3 and 5, I believe, when this came before us. And Mary Joy was really fond of this building, and I hadn't thought about it at the time, but it really does, the architectural detail, the Art Deco, even though it's, you know, not of that era, but it's a pretty cool looking building. And it really is too bad that that wall is there, and that I guess the Japanese maples have gotten a little bit large to obscure it, but there's a building that's similar that sits in between East High Street and Mead, if you know where that is. It used to be a photography building, and Allison and Chris Hayes have bought it. And it has that same similar detailing. And then I believe there's one also that still is used for something next to W. Brown and across the street from Moss, down in Belmont. That still uses a gas station, or, you know, but I believe that also has these. I think there are several other examples of these buildings in Charlottesville.
Yeah, there's supposed to be 4, and I know this and the one that Chris and Allison bought. I don't know the other 2. I've been meaning to drive my Google car, so I can.
I'm pretty
there's
sure
supposed to be 4.
Yeah, the one across next to W. Brown and across the street from the market, across the street from Moss in Belmont. I'm pretty sure it's similar. And there's another one as well.
They're very unusual in Charlottesville, and we're losing them all the time. We didn't have many to begin with, and we're losing more and more of them. Yeah, this is an important building.
I mean, the one I always waiting for somebody to try to tear down is what's the W roof on West Main?
Mel's.
Mel's, yeah, you know, that's such a cool building.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. And now Allison, I will say Allison and Chris doing some alterations to the one on high, but it's within the entrance corridor, so it's somewhat of a different application of the design guidelines. I agree with you all. I think the thing is that what I saw key in the guidelines was that if it's introducing for an outbuilding or another structure, if it's different, then it should be behind. It should be subordinate to the structure, and that's where, you know, you're saying when looking at it from the district in, I just don't think it fits. But I, you know, again, wanted to hear what you all thought.
I think even if this was new construction and it wouldn't satisfy our guidelines, it's a kind of a faux replication. It is using false materials and a building tradition that's not found here. It really is being used as a sign more than an actual construction.
Good point.
And I think it would obscure the historic elements of this structure further.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
the best way for them to be successful is to have really good food, and then everyone will go there.
I miss Mona Loco.
Yeah. I will pass that on. They're certainly welcome to make an application, but I will pass that on as some helpful guidance. Those were the only things that I had on. Well, and I also, just a reminder, I sent out that note about we are preparing our annual report as a certified local government, and I have to summarize any sort of related continuing ed that you all have done. it really is, only requirement is an hour of something related to the field with me. I'll send out another reminder, but when we get back in January, I need to dive in, and I will be out Friday and through next weekend. I am going to check in. I think Robert's checking in next week because we have our BAR deadline coming in, but I'll be working the rest of this week. If you have any questions, and then, but otherwise, thank you. Those are the questions I had. I know you had a discussion about the other things, so I'm handing it off to you, Mr. Gastinger.
Well, I just, while we had our break, I have been following the conversation related to the preservation awards and made an amended slate for consideration. I could read that in as a proposal or as a motion, and then have it open for conversation. Is that what you'd like me to do?
Yes.
Okay, then I'd move that we, the BAR, grant the following awards to projects this year. The best rehabilitation of a historic structure, 743 Park Street. Special contribution to the cultural landscape of Charlottesville, and I used James' language there, to the Memorial of Enslaved Laborers at the University of Virginia. The best new site construction in a historic district at 301 East Jefferson Street, the Congregation Beth Israel. Outstanding individual achievement for 400 Rugby Road, Westminster Presbyterian Church. Important preservation of a significant neighborhood structure or building at 415 10th Street Northwest. And the Preston A. Coiner Preservation Award to Mary Joyce Gala.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
I do want to say one thing. This is just, and I don't mean to sound like obsessive, but I will say one thing about the memorial. I think it's a really great sculpture. I think the lighting's absolutely horrific, but that's beside me.
Have you seen it lately, Tim? They changed it.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
did they?
revised
No,
it.
I haven't. Is it a lot better than it was?
Yes, because it was designed for there being a bunch of trees around it. And then there was a design change to not put the trees in. And all of a sudden the lights stood out like sore thumbs. So it's been changed.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. There are less poles and they're pulled further back from the memorial.
All right, I'll check it out. Anyway, that was my only, I mean, I have nothing against the sculpture, just the lighting looked, it was on a par with Court Square. Which is the worst.
Can I be a nerd and read what I prepared on Mary Joy, just by way of reminder? Because as it was pointed out to me by Jeff, it's kind of amazing. I mean, how many people did work with her? Tim, are you it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Brack and Carl, and we're about to lose two of those tonight. So anyway, so I thought I knew everything about her, but I had to do a little research. So I said I wanted to nominate her, and I'd like to nominate her for the Preston A. Coiner Preservationist Award, which is an award we've given before, and it's given to a non-architect. She does have a master's in planning, but she's not a licensed architect or design professional, for their contributions to preserve historic structures or resources in our city. She was the preservation and design planner for the city of Charlottesville for 15 years, from 2003 until 2018. In that capacity, she staffed the Board of Architecture Review in all matters, the Historic Resources Committee, and also staffed the Planning Commission on entrance quarter review applications. I realized Jeff does all of those things, but just as a refresher, during her time when the city experienced significant development and the docket of the BAR continued apace, particularly after we did a complete overhaul of the zoning ordinance in 2005, which created a lot more potential for density. She oversaw the historic survey process and nominations for adding the following ADC districts to the city: the Corner District in 2003, Oakhurst Gildersleeve in 2005, Rugby University Venable in 2006, and then the expansion of North Downtown, which was the city's original district, in 2006 also. She also guided the city in the nomination of numerous individually protected properties. I think those happened in 2007, and oversaw a complete upgrade and overhaul of the ADC guidelines in 2005. And finally, she led the adoption of the Historic Conservation District guidelines in 2009, which with the adding of Martha Jefferson District in 2007 and Rugby Road Historic District in 14. So just by way of reminder, she did a lot to move things along, to preserve our historic resources in the city, in the city in a time where there was a lot of development pressures and a lot of, really for the first time, a lot of outside money coming into Charlottesville, which we had never seen before those years. So I didn't always agree with her, but I loved that she towed the line that she did. So
Absolutely. And there was
so I
a great
second that motion, or third that motion.
Okay, I guess with thank you very much, Sherry. I'll just call a vote for the
Let's
heck of
make
it.
sure there's any other discussion, or anybody have any other questions on the motion on the floor? Okay, just want to make sure I had a chance.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
and Mr. Lehendro.
Aye.
So I just have one thing that it seems to be somewhat moribund, but if somebody wants to be a representative for the BAR on Place, if Place actually resurfaces, something to think about.
What would that look like if they're not meeting?
It
It's
may die.
Place, I don't know. There's no there.
You were so optimistic, Tim.
I know, but I'm just saying.
So,
It seems to have died on the vine from what I can tell, but anyway.
Well, I certainly have interest. I certainly would invite others that might have interest, but need some advice on what that looks like so we don't lose that thread.
I
Getting
think
on an email chain or what?
I think the key would be to, I think Andrew Monshine right now is the chairman, so I would just get a hold of Andrew.
Okay.
And do you have his email address? Because I can send that to you if you don't have it.
Please send it to the BAR and we can bring
Yeah,
it up.
yeah, that's true. I can do that.
Figure out who would like to do that.
I mean, I'm still going to be involved with oddly enough, the lighting. Because Andrew and I and Mark Schuyler and then Phil Ayana and some other people are all kind of trying to circle the wagons on that. And we've been talking to Jeff about it as well. So I don't think the lighting is moribund. And I also think that at some point we really have to refire up the idea of a really, live 3D model of the city that, is keyed into GIS and also keyed into applications for these larger projects in particular. So that got started, and then basically we didn't have the money nor the manpower to continue.
Just
Tim
a
wasn't
reminder
with
that
us.
council, I think, has to approve whoever from the BAR joins the place
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah. What was that, Sherry?
I was just gonna, if we're done talking about the
Place committee?
corpse-like place committee. Tim wasn't with us when we began our meeting, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that I've really enjoyed working with Tim and Carl, and we will definitely feel a void when they're not with us. This is making me sad, actually. Thank you for everything that you guys have done to make me feel welcome since I got back on. It's really a different BAR. It's a different, it's quite different. I had a lot of kind of learning to do. I still do. So thank you for being great colleagues and having a sense of humor and treating applicants as kindly as you do. So.
Well, from my part, I can't believe I think it's been 11 years. Because Fred kind of joined and immediately bailed and kind of suckered me into it at Zocalo one night. But in all honesty, I've really enjoyed it. And like the one thing I really miss about my school days is, not sort of having any sort of a teaching component to my life. And there is that to this, that, talking with lay people and trying to figure out the best way to describe things and all that's a challenge. And, it's kind of fun, frankly. And then talking to Jeff is obviously always fun. And Mary Joy was fabulous. And Jeff will be someday in our minds, but Mary Joy
I'm
was
getting there. Yeah. I turned 59 in 2 weeks, so I'm going to really be something different next year. Tim, Carl, I will say, I know last time when we had members step off the board, I did something special, but it doesn't seem the same over Zoom. So I'm just saving that for, and we will get together when we get to Theta, or I don't know how many more letters we're going to go through. This is, we're all in uncharted territory. But I want to just say, Carl and Tim, to you, it's certainly Jody and Breck, but when Tim was at the party where I knew I probably had this job, and someone was toasting Mary Joy and saying, well, let me tell you the next person that takes this job, and everyone was laughing and laughing. And I'm like, well, that's probably going to be me. So, but Tim, you and Carl kind of helped me along, and Melissa just showing me the ropes, and I appreciate that. And you have been mentors, Carl. You definitely in a lot of details, and Tim, certainly we're going to continue with this lighting thing. And I'll just say, we do have an opportunity with the new city management. I'm very positive, guys. I feel I've gotten to know James is a forward-thinking person. He wants to look over the horizon. Sam Saunders and Ashley Marshall, who have come in as the assistant city managers, are very committed, and they're really great to work with. And so I've been trying to talk to my colleagues in NDS and saying, we have an opportunity to be part of this. And, and I want to encourage all of you, and even Tim and Carl, not on the BAR, to this opportunity with the zoning rewrite and how we implement the comprehensive plan is critical. And I know that we have, because I've talked to the new leadership about, a maintenance plan for the mall and a lighting plan for the entire city and things like that. So we have opportunities to do it. Just have to be persistent with it. I again, just that's my thought of hope. But Tim, Carl, thank you. You guys have been fantastic. I will thank you on another date in another way.
And I just want to say thank you guys for humoring me, putting up with me. I know I could be a pain in the ass, but you guys have been great. And it's unfortunate that I missed we'd go out and get beers after meetings in the past, and I've seen all of you guys in person, but it's still just hopefully you guys get to do that again, because I think it makes it a lot better when the board can kind of hang out together. And but anyways, thank you, and it's been great.
Well, thanks to you guys. Gosh, we'll find time. There's a lot to be said. We'll find a moment to raise a glass. And thank you to everybody for all your contributions this year in Zoom world. It's not insignificant, and I think that the city is very, very lucky to have people that are giving this work this amount of time and consideration for very little pay and notoriety or fame, fortune. So thank you, and we'll meet again in the new year. I would last thing is that we will be welcoming 3 new folks in January. So Robert, Jeff, Sherry, and everyone, let's think about making some time in the pre-meeting of our first meeting to or otherwise to onboard those new members, and for all of us to kind of collect ourselves as we set out into the new agenda in the next year.
We'll get that. And I said Melissa, I meant Melanie Miller, the other person who was there at the meeting with the party with Tim. But you're right, Brecken, we will do that. I've already reached out to all 3. encourage them to listen tonight. Kind of worried that that might chase them away, but we do need to sit down with them or Zoom down with them and get to know them. So, all right, y'all. Thank you. Have a safe holiday. Wear your masks. Get your booster. And happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Bye all.
Happy